Great. It's 5:59, and I think this is all that we're expecting for now. So let's get rolling. I'll call the meeting to order. I'd just like to kind of acknowledge that because of the span between our last couple of meetings, we initially had a pretty stacked warrant agenda, and given the heat and everything, I'm going to propose that we table a few items with the hope of keeping things short. And also, you know, if we try to move along any of the particular topics, it's really out of the pure motivation of just trying to keep everybody's exposure to the heat at a minimum. And so I do apologize if that comes as a surprise to anyone. Anyway, with that, the changes that I am proposing would be the tabling of the spring trails committee check-in, the planning commission check-in, and then the other one, which is the Pekin Brook Road.
No.
Oh, yeah, actually, no, there's one other one in addition to that. There's the potential capital expenses at 6:45, which are discussions that I think can pretty easily be tabled until our next meeting sometime in July. And that would be the intention with each of those. So members of the community who are going to be representing those interests have already been contacted, and we're fine with those changes. With a note about the Pekin Brook Spring conversation, we do have a couple of updates to provide on that particular topic. So I just wanted to kind of highlight what those updates are, but try to keep discussion of it to kind of a minimum for this evening. So are other board members comfortable with those revisions?
Yeah.
Modifications? Great. Are there any other proposed changes?
No.
And I guess I'd say if anybody feels like we need to, there is a break scheduled, even with those changes, we're still probably gonna be into a hour and a half or multi-hour meeting. So if anybody feels you take a break, please speak up. There any other changes to consider?
No.
So one of the actions that we have listed at the beginning is to accept the resignation of Steve Sweeney from the position of Lister with the term ending in March 2026. Steve has made an effort to serve in the role, but was thinking that was not a great fit, and we appreciate his service, but I think and also appreciate a recognition that it just maybe not the role for him. And I think that is honorable in and of itself. So can I entertain a motion to accept his resignation?
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Next up, we have the interview of potential candidates for the position of Lister, which would be a consideration to fill the balance of Steve's term, and for which we do have 3 candidates. And I think we also have some or the other 2 listers in the house to kind of provide some feedback or pose questions. So with that, I guess interested parties, I guess there's some, I don't know why I would bring anybody forward. Do the 3 of you want to sit the hot seat? Yeah, you're sufficiently hot. So just a little bit of context, I guess, for kind of the format. This is pretty we haven't quite figured out how to do these like group interviews in a not awkward way. I think it's fair to say we have three very compelling and experienced individuals who are motivated to serve in the role. So my intention is just to ask three pretty basic questions, and we'll entertain any other questions from the board or fellow potential listers. And then we'll probably table a decision until after an executive session that's scheduled later in the meeting, if that sounds fair. And I'll try the best I can to kind of rotate the order in which folks are answering questions. Does that sound about right to everyone?
Yeah.
So with that, I think the first question, I think probably the easiest one would just be a brief introduction of yourself, what you feel is your understanding of the role and relevant experience to that role. And yeah, so leave it at that. Toby, we'll start in the middle and we'll move around.
Toby Calais, I've been moved to Calais in 1988 and I served in many roles. I spend a lot of time with John McCullough as a friend and co-worker. And from what he says, the issue that really is with districts is dealing with a computer system. Filing stuff, the information that the town has to the state, in order to just set the grand list and set the tax rate. As you all know, I spent a year and a half doing FEMA computer work. So I'm very familiar with the tasks, and the skill set of doing that. Plan to be in town for quite some more time, so I'm not just going to do this for a year and disappear.
Mr. Maker?
I'm Tim Baker, and I moved to Calais in 1982, I think, or three. And I retired about 9 or 6 years ago. And in my career, I worked a lot with building systems, primarily as an energy auditor, starting back in 1980. And I also have a lot of experience with multiple platforms of software and programs and all those sorts of things. I also spent some time talking to John McCullough, and he didn't miss me not put my hat in the ring. So.
Are you still ruminating then on serving in the role or willing after that? Yeah. Okay. Rachel?
Rachel Harihar. I've been a Vermont resident my whole life, moved to Calais 3 years ago. Been bouncing around central Vermont before finding our home in Calais for about a decade. I have experience with property values. I've been in the mortgage industry and banking for about 5 years, prior to taking a break a couple years ago after starting a family, and looking to get back into the workforce and becoming a stronger part of the community. Technical savvy, worked with lots of mortgage software. I've hundreds of tax bills have come through my hands. I have also an interest in properties in general. A pastime of mine is property browsing, so
thank you. Before I move on to the next question I have for every, like a little bit of clarification from John or Wilson, knowing that the role requires some pretty regular commitment of time and collaboration with other listers. Can you clarify about how much time either per week or per month?
There is month to month, but what we're looking for is someone who can commit to the time. It takes an average of 3 years to make a good lister. I've been at it for 7 years, and sometimes I don't know what I'm doing with them. There's a lot to learn, there's a lot of training. We want someone who's gonna commit and spend some time with it, not work 90 days and not have enough to do.
Sorry about that. Just got electrolytes on my face there. Can you clarify a little bit more on what the time commitment is? So you guys are regularly meeting on a weekly basis or?
This time of year, we're meeting quite a bit. Normally it's a couple days a week, maybe.
Okay.
Couple days
Couple days a week for a certain number, for a couple of hours a day.
It varies
Yeah.
from season to season. Springtime's our busy season, we can property inspections and it's a lot of time to work.
So to that point, this is normally an elected position. And given kind of the intensive kind of seasonality of it and the importance of the role, you know, the select board has taken up consideration to exercise its authority to appoint somebody to the position. And want to make sure that those who are seeking appointment through this means have a good understanding of what the time commitment could be and that we have a good understanding of what constraints may be on your time for making that commitment and fulfilling the commitment. So Rachel, do you want to speak to that one first?
Sure, yeah, I'm ready at this point to get back in the workforce. I've got support, for making time and I feel equipped to, with the applicant.
Great, and if you were appointed, you'd be looking for running for reelection in March?
Yes.
So,
Yeah, I do have a lot of time already committed to the town, but he was done, the assistant road commissioner, Kari is almost able to do all the work himself, so my time commitment is very open. And yeah, I would run for reelection in March.
okay. And Jen?
My intention would be to serve out the term and then go on from there. John had explained to me that the idea of it takes 3 years before you begin to know how to ask the questions, and I think working with John in the past, we were working 10 years on various projects, and I might be able to pare that down in 2 years. I have time, I have available time, I don't get other commitments in town other than the Trails Committee.
Thank you. I'd like to open it up to either of my fellow select board members here and whether or not there are any other questions or points of clarification.
I guess one would just be for you, because I know for you two, a lot of the time is weekday, daytime, that works. For you, right?
Yes.
For that. You know, maybe you two are tired and available.
Retired and working harder than me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly, yes.
Chrissy, do you have any other questions?
I guess my only question is, do each of you have, you feel like you fully understand what a lister does? Do you have any questions you want to ask now while we've got the other two listers here, or you solid on that?
I feel very confident, you know, John complains all the time. So I essentially understand all of the issues that they're facing and what they're looking for. And someone to help them out.
I feel like I have a good understanding, been doing research since the position has been posted.
I
And
think it is a position that requires on-the-job training.
Okay.
Working with John, I'm talking to him, pretty extensively, I can see that there's a lot to learn.
And I know through conversations with John as well, that, you know, it's a role that requires a healthy amount of patience for fairly antiquated software and sounds like each of you have different experiences potentially working with some different forms of antiquated software. But are there any specific questions that either of the listers would like to hear the candidates speak to? Yeah, John.
This is a question I want to say first, though, that what we do has almost nothing to do with appraisal. What we do is we come up with an assessed value using cost tables that are provided to us. And then we can apply a COA and even come close to fair market value. That's a lot of changes than anything else. But as long as we use the same standards and treat everybody fairly for assessment purposes, that's the biggest part of the job. A lister is an elected position, but the state won't allow a lister to continue even if elected unless that person demonstrates they have so much training every year. And training is a requirement thing.
Do they quantify the hours of training, John?
It goes on, we have to attend two meetings, so maybe be 3 days of training annually. Something so three, 18, 24 hours maybe.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thanks, everyone, for commenting on that. Yes, Barbara.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
So my experience just witnessing the listers at work for the last number of years is that it's very data driven. It's very computer technical. It's very database input and management. And I would just want to make sure that each of the candidates is very proficient on computer using different databases that need to talk to each other, and they don't always do that. So there's a lot of troubleshooting and just understanding the technology side of it is probably the biggest part of this position. John Wilson can respond to that.
We had one problem today where we needed to reach out to our district advisor. She works for PVR, she has forever, she knows the stuff in and out. One problem, we were probably with her for 2 hours trying to deal with it. And that happens all the time. So even people who live and breathe this stuff.
Well, thank you, John.
I see Tegan has a question.
I do not have a question. I think you all covered it fairly well.
Yes, I'd like to say that most of my experience has been with spreadsheet applications. I'm not really a database person. So I just thought it would be good to let me know that.
Thank you. Well, with that, I'd like to kind of close the conversation on this. I do appreciate everybody's commentary on this. Doug, is this in reference to the lister position?
Yeah, I recommend Rachel
Okay,
because she's from Calais. And she lives on Lightning Ridge Road. She's not from Maple Corners. That's what I like to see. I'd like to see somebody else on this board. I've been knocking it down, so I know a lot about what's going on. She should get the job.
well, thank you. Thanks for the comments, Doug, and keeping them succinct. I appreciate it. Thank you. So thanks, everyone. You're welcome to stick around until the end, or not, but we probably aren't gonna be taking up the executive session until the very end. It's kind of hard to tell where we're gonna land on that, but we'll make sure to contact everyone by tomorrow.
Clarification, I've given later. So,
Yep.
There's one position open and there are 3 candidates.
Correct. That's correct.
Wow.
I know. How about that?
That's good, that's good.
Turn the corner, John.
Yeah.
And she's not from Maple Corners.
Well, it's
Now,
a,
if you put a house in
Thank
the
you.
corner, I can stand up and say something.
yeah, it would be something.
Yeah.
So, the next item on the agenda is the long-term financial planning, which is, here we are. Welcome. I see, Christian.
Thank you.
Doing well.
So I don't know if you guys have some specific questions you want to get into, about kind of come to prepare to some of the services or experiences CVRPC is engaged with other municipalities in our region.
Yeah.
And maybe some ideas that might be fitting to Calais too. But if there's some specific issues right off you'd like to get to, I'm happy to start with your question.
Well, I think, the best place to start would just kind of give you, and maybe Kari's already kind of, served this up a little context to where we're coming from, but we've, like many communities, have been, starting to think about, you know, what the long-term financial impacts are gonna be, all kinds of things, from, infrastructure maintenance issues and federal funding availability of grant resources. There's a lot, you know, increased costs on just the employment side, that many of these things seem to be far outside of our hyper regional control or hyper local control. We've tried to start engaging in conversations with our adjoining communities, just to start, I guess, bird dogging where there might be opportunities to find efficiencies or ways to collaborate. We wanted to kind of invite that same kind of line of dialogue with CVRPC. We already engage a number of CVRPC's resources and have various projects, but certainly want to try to keep the line of dialogue as open as possible on what you guys might be seeing from a more regional perspective, and trying to avoid the situation where there's many individuals, you know, trying to spin up the same conversations, you know, without the same kind of broader perspective, and keep things as efficient, the dialogue as efficient as possible. But so certainly if there are particular projects that you think fall into that kind of category of thinking for continued exploration, I want to hear about those, but.
I think the you know, the process that really, the straw that stirs the drink, so to speak, is the capital improvement program.
Yeah.
And this really isn't about a document, it's about a process, it's about finding a body within the municipality, whether it's can be the select board subcommittee thereof, or a budget committee, who can run a process year over year and maintain an ongoing document that minimum 10, maybe 20-year financial horizon. So East Montpelier has been doing this pretty intensively since 2013. I think that would be a great conversation to have for y'all, is sit down with their treasurer or chair of that board. They have maybe a committee called the Capital Improvement Committee, and kind of understand how their process works. But we worked with the municipality of Middlesex 3 years ago, helped them get the process started. And what the process is entailed was late summer, as before the select board really started putting together its budget, reaching out to all the departments or or even committees that oversees the work, and understanding what their priorities are and what needs to go on the list. If it's a new grader, the road crew, making sure you understand when that's necessary. Is it an emergency, or is this 15 years or 10 years?
Doug, John, the conversation in the back is a little distracting.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry about it. Thanks.
And so starting in the fall, reach out, figure out what's important, what are the important elements to have on that capital plan. The idea with the capital improvement program is that you're leveling out taxes long run. You're saying, all right, we know we got these big expenses, let's plan them on the off years. And so there's a place the select board can point to them when constituents are wondering, well, why isn't my road repaved or that culvert been replaced, and say, well, it's on the list. We prioritized it behind that, you know, a dump truck, which has been in the shop all year, et cetera, et cetera. It gives that transparency to the residents, so they understand how this year's budget fits into the scope of the longer term budget. But it really is all about having that process in place and a responsible body to make those recommendations to the select board. Like I said, we helped Middlesex get that stood up a couple of years back. We worked with the municipality of Orange, they really just wanted a list, like, what do we need to find, spend money on over the course of the next 10 years? Unfortunately, when you have a list, you don't do anything about it, it just disappears. So a couple select boards maybe forget they have the list, and then 3 years from now, all that work, down with the engineers may be forgotten. So that's why personally I'm a big proponent of the process. As I said, we can, you know, right off the top, give you examples of folks who are doing a good job at this, the kind of intake forms they're using to bring projects in and vet them and how they're being ranked. If you're interested in actually, you know, working with us to stand that process up, we can help you apply for a municipal planning grant, this would be an eligible cost. And could either write it for you or help you find a consultant, right, to work with a public group and build that process. And that's what we did with those tests. Through the municipal planning grant, we helped them build the process.
So, you know, I think maybe this is an unfair characterization of our resource. You know, I think accessing a municipal planning grant is always going to be compelling, but just like any offsetting the cost with any grant is going to be compelling. I think we're pretty fortunate in Calais in that we have, you know, some pretty talented volunteers and staff at this point for, you know, standing up a process and defining what that process is. I think what still seems to be a blind spot from my perspective is we're already pretty good. We can always be a little bit better at making lists. We can make those lists more detailed, and we can find a way of creating a process for going through that. But the blind spot is always, what's the list of everybody around us, and where might there be efficiencies in trying to take on projects at the same time. You know, I think like paving is probably a good example, and I'm curious whether or not there's any discussion at like a regional level or regional planning level to start putting together processes or mechanisms for facilitating that conversation, or incentivizing towns to engage in bidding some of those projects in collaboration and seeing, you know, some sort of benefit from that efficiency. Or you know, we could try to do that as a community, but like we're constantly reacting to whatever business kind of comes our way. As good as and disciplined as we try to be on the planning side, there's a huge scope of work that we're already trying to.
So two things, one coming up, we'll be hosting in partnership with League of Cities and Towns, a select board meetup, and that's an opportunity to come meet other select board members in your case and towns, even further around the region. And share experiences and talk about, hey, what would be valuable to talk more about as select board members rather than planning commissioners or land use issues, right? So I think that's a real good opportunity to maybe give this question a larger megaphone and you know, test it with some of your peers. The second thing is, under state statute and under our bylaws, we are enabled to do shared services. This could, you know, an example might be a shared planner. So our town planner might do 2 days in Calais, 2 days in East Montpelier. They're hosted out of the RPC, and then we can interested with smoothing that business agreement. Shared purchasing is an area we haven't really gotten into, and it's less common in Vermont. But where there's an interest, we'll figure out the way to get it done, because I think it's key.
Yeah, I think that like that's one that has always just kind of been niggling at the back of my head. You know, we in this state suffer from the economy of scale issue pretty acutely. And you've got the state going out and, you know, and procuring equipment. You know, we've got individual towns procuring equipment. You know, very crudely, it seems like if there were towns that were participating in an adequate and transparent enough capital planning strategy, and they were timing some of these expenses, like if there were a way of organizing like collective purchasing agreements or financing, like there has got to be a way that we can make more compelling
And I could imagine every February, RIC collecting, all right, how many culverts are y'all planning on buying this year, right?
Yeah.
And just starting there, figuring out the contract, going through a procurement process. With delivery all baked into it, so we're might be able to realize some minor savings, saving travel or.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well. As I said, you know, we haven't done that yet, but that's why we can try. So if that's a direction that Calais and Worcester, Calais, and East Montpelier, Calais and Woodbury are interested in going, let's figure out what's for us to get.
Yeah, and would you think that, like, if there were some sort of letter of intent or support from those communities to, you know, apply for a municipal planning grant, like, is you guys aren't funding the municipal planning grant, right? So like, would we
Right.
be able to apply for a grant to task the CVRPC or somebody specifically to help kind of,
Set up a shared purchasing agreement.
or yeah, something.
Yeah, I think. It'd be staff time, but we're also funded through the. You can see the commerce and community development to support our municipalities as you. Engage in municipal planning and these sort of issues. So some staff time, it can be a little normal and should be covered under our general responsibilities, but potentially grant funding to support employer fees. To, you know, figure out what that agreement look like. And I think staff that look at it quickly with their colleagues over at the state and say, hey, is this a viable expense for this kind of program? And we're going to put the application together ourselves with letters of support from you. And go forward.
Okay.
From there. So purchasing is what I hear. That's sort of like. The one that sounds most exciting.
That feels like low hanging fruit, so to speak.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
because all the towns in central Vermont have these same expenses.
Mhm.
And there must be discounts available for bulk commitments, I think. But. you know,
Yeah.
the fact that it hasn't been established yet, means there must be some obstacle, right?
Yeah.
Or limited benefit.
The state program, maybe fill some of that gap, people, municipalities purchasing through the state.
Yeah, but VLCT actually sent out a call for interest in salt this year.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that
Solar
before.
purchases, yeah.
And so we shared numbers about what we purchase on an annual basis, and they said they'd come back with pricing and then we could make it. That's the first time I've seen something like that.
I would think that like the challenge with any of the raw materials purchasing is that you're gonna have some accountability issue when you're drawing down on whatever the allotment is, unless everybody can, you know, somehow take delivery of it, or take delivery of it incrementally in a way that, you know, is represented in a contract. And, you know, maybe not other communities have the same issue, but like here, we definitely have a storage issue. So like, we wouldn't necessarily be able to, you know, store our own share or something like that, if that were a particular term. So that's gonna be a limitation for us. But, you know, that then kind of raises and begs the question, well, could there be a regional storage or land purchase, you know, some sort of shared ownership of storage facility? You know, we have particular geographic, I think, constraints here, but, you know, if we had something that was more regionally shared, that would be interesting, like a land acquisition. At the county level, I have no idea. At this point, I'm just throwing spaghetti at the wall. But, you know, I think that what the procurement is kind of compelling to me, because every year we're having to look at those budgets. And every year we're having to look at an increase in cost and increase in volume of consumption.
And it doesn't feel like we're giving up that much autonomy either, and just committing to where we purchase it from, you know. It seems to me like the next level would be more shared services. You mentioned planner, but to me, it seems inevitable that, you know, a decade from now or more, we'll have a treasurer that serves multiple towns.
Right.
And probably before that, an assessor to replace listers, you know, that kind of thing. And it just, that seems like the obstacle there is, to a degree, is giving up the autonomy of having, a select board can have control over that, but it does seem inevitable.
Yeah, when all those shared positions, if that conversation advances, so it's in the virus to the table and figure out what that would look like.
Just do it, it's coming.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's come up in conversation a lot about which roles can be
In the regionalized.
shared. We're having trouble finding a constable. Could there be a Woodbury Worcester Calais constable?
The problem with some of those positions is constable or health officer, or, there's a couple others that we don't really pay much.
Right,
They're volunteers,
right,
essentially,
Yeah,
it's a small
right.
stipend, but if we're gonna hire somebody.
right,
it-
it gets
we're gonna
way
pay a lot
expensive,
for it.
yeah.
And then working through us, we're not cheap per se, we have a health plan, we have an indirect rate that all gets tacked on top of the base rate, so. We have had conversations about a planner, and usually it doesn't get much further than our hourly.
Right.
Because you might be able to find someone around here for $20 an hour, 25 bucks. By the time you got everything on top of our base level, it's a whole lot. So, I mean, just generally, the phone, the door is open, always open to further conversation. I encourage anybody to stop by or give a call if something comes up in weeks or months in the future, and we have staff who can help engage on this, without any contracts or anything in place, no agreements, just part of our municipal technical systems.
well, thank you, Christian. I think the next obvious step is to just kind of keep an eye out on the scheduling for the regional select board meetups.
July 17th, something like that?
Yeah, sounds right. I thought that on
Somewhere in there, I'll forward the.
Yeah.
if you haven't gotten that.
Yeah,
and I think we're still putting the agenda together to some degree, but as there's an open floors, raising the hand and saying, hey, has anybody addressed this, or the 17th out, or would be interested in coming and talking, and it doesn't necessarily need to be an adjacent municipality, depending on how this works out.
sure,
Maybe it's got it.
yeah. Well, with that, I think probably times somewhat well with like our next meeting, and maybe we can reserve some time in the next meeting to designate somebody available to attend that and send them off with a list for participating in that conversation.
Great. I hope it'll be a good meeting and an opportunity just to not feel so isolated from other folks doing the exact same job just down the road.
I don't know, I whipsaw between just wanting to go into the woods and hide my head in the sand and engage in conversation to fix it, for sure. And yeah, I think we'll continue to kind of refine our thoughts around the purchasing. I think that's a pretty compelling one to kind of engage around.
We can start to look into that a little bit formally as well, to get ahead of that conversation.
Okay, thanks, Christian.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, yeah.
I just want to say, I really have appreciated working with many of your staff members at this point. Ryan,
Out here,
quite a bit, Sam Lash, Keith Coven's been great. Lincoln, it's just, it's really feels like an excellent resource for us.
Right. Well, we do answer to our commissioners, we got John back there. But I really think of our municipalities as our bosses ultimately. We do try to. You guys first.
Thank you. Great. So we're gonna be tabling the potential capital expenses conversation, and then moving on to meeting with the outgoing health officer, not here.
Hey, Jordan.
Yeah,
Jordan. I was talking to him before the meeting started. I don't think he got the message that it had moved, so I think he's still planning to zoom in at 7:05.
okay. That is understandable. Were we anticipating any representation for the curb cut application?
I expect that. I don't know that for sure, but let's not move that one up if we can.
All right.
We can.
Well,
certainly
John's
take-
here, so
take
we can
on
do the
that.
private road maintenance agreement. So,
So I get out here early?
yeah, if you want,
Can't
John.
wait to get out to that.
Yeah.
I wanna make a comment, though. I was shocked at how cool this place was, despite all the people here that are less than cool. No, I mean, the insulation really is working, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
Amazing.
And the foresight of Barbara to come in and draw the shades and get the
Yeah.
fans circulating. Yeah, it was a very pleasant surprise. So
Feels great.
it does feel good. John, just for context, because of the heat, we were trying to kind of truncate what was scheduled to be a 3-hour meeting marathon. So just kind of moving things around the best we can. So if you're happy to get into the private maintenance agreement, we'll take that one up and keep things moving.
And just, if I can chime in now, I've already gone up and down the road, removed all the trouble.
Okay.
With a shovel, right down, grabbing the tap root, which is bare, particularly in the heat. Actually, just before this incredible heat, but, it's a job and it's really important after I do that job, I don't have the town mower. For instance, go down to that triangle, which is about to go to seed. Every year it goes to seed before we mow it. And the last thing I want to see is that thing dance down at my house, which it comes to next. So, I really appreciate and would appreciate in the past being allowed to do my own roadside maintenance. The next thing I'll do is cut it. I've got a disc mower, I just drop it and mow it just as good as the town can. Bill, gave us last year, took the machine back to the shop and washed it off. Because he wanted to get the higher tree limbs, so that should be good for a few years, and, so as long as we follow that kind of approach, that would be great if we do that again this year. He's gonna need to continue living, speak for himself, I haven't seen him going either. But I appreciate your approving my request to not have the town mow both sides of the road. Within my property boundaries.
Yeah, understood, John. I think it was an arrangement that, pretty well worked out last year. We did have the ordinance advisory committee kind of update the application that, now includes, a statement acknowledging that, you're committing to, performing the maintenance, but, should fall short of expectations or timing or what have you, that, the town reserves the right to perform it, but that we'll be contacting you before any of that action is taken for sure. Just trying to set expectations around communication, as best we can, but, I think this is a pretty straightforward one, given the stretches of road that we're talking about and the concerns, so. Does anybody else have any, concerns or questions or?
No changes from last year, right?
No, there are no line of sight issues on our side, straight away.
Yeah. Great. So I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the,
One other thing, I do, it's okay, just so you understand, I do like to cut a little later. At least the southern portion, because if beautiful wildflowers come in there. It just looks good and good for the butterflies and bees, and so. I would mow that in August.
okay. That's understood. I think that was pretty well in line with how it played out last year too, so. That sounds reasonable, relative to that stretch of road, so.
yeah, I don't make it those.
I would move to approve the roadside mowing application.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It looks like there's a spot for each of us to sign on to that, so. We'll get a copy of that. Signed and over to you, John. If not tonight, then.
Oh, I don't get it.
We're recorded 7 or 8 different ways at this point, so it's pretty easy to find.
Yeah.
Thank you, John. Did I lose my agenda? Come on, Jordan.
Right. tackle the administrative items?
Yeah, I think that,
20 items.
You did a fantastic job.
Yeah, you've done great.
six,
I'm gonna turn it into a record short. list.
6:44. Yeah, let's try to roll through the administrative items. There's a lot of them, but I think they're, pretty well, straightforward. So the, first one is the approval of the minutes, from the June 2nd select board meeting. Let's take these up individually, I guess, that everybody had the opportunity to review the June 2nd regular meeting minutes.
Yeah, the problem is that I was not at that.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow, that's a unique problem. So let's just table that one then. That's not a big deal.
We don't have. quorum that-
Oh, because you won't vote on it?
Well,
I don't-
if you feel like.
You're a quorum, and if two of you vote, you're a majority of a quorum. I also
So
think
we
you
can
can
vote,
vote for-
she can abstain. And it's still. a
You still,
quorum.
you still have a
Yeah,
majority of a
that's true.
quorum. I also think you can vote,
No, that's not how it works.
No,
I don't think so.
I've been through this, I used to be on the ZBA zoning board adjustment in Blueberry. And, you have to have a majority of the board.
You have to have a majority
The
approval.
quorum is a majority board, and you have to have that majority, vote in favor to enact the decision.
Okay.
So, if there's an affirmative decision to be made, needs all three votes, and the affirmative, someone abstains or votes no. You know, wait till you get a fuller board, get those three votes.
okay, and can someone who, was not at a meeting vote on the minutes? Do they have to?
Yes,
Yeah,
and
they,
it's a procedural.
Can I jump in for a sec?
Yeah.
Minutes approval doesn't require a formal motion. If also, just putting that out there.
So it's like an administrative
Yes.
action that doesn't need a formal vote.
Yeah, it can just be agreed on. It doesn't require a formal vote. A lot of groups
Interesting.
like to do it, but statutorily it's not required.
It's an acknowledgement.
I think it's just kind of a clean way of acknowledging it and moving forward. I mean, it's kind of like a standard practice at this point, so, you know, Christie, that's, I leave that to your judgment if you've reviewed the minutes and feel like that seems like a fair representation of dialogue and items, then.
And if either of you had any corrections to it, then, you know.
I had read through it
But
pretty
these look
carefully
like
and,
thorough
yeah.
and, complete minutes, so I'm happy to say that.
okay. Jamie, you wanna move to,
I will move to approve the minutes from the June 2nd.
and I'll second it. And, we'll just get a vote to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. And then the minutes from the June 2nd dog hearing. Has everybody had the opportunity to review those?
June 9th?
Or, I'm sorry, June 9th.
Yeah.
Any concerns or questions, changes?
Not with the minutes.
I did want to know if you wanted to take out the name of the person, wasn't in attendance, the trainer who worked with the dogs, was it clear that?
Did she end up in here?
Yeah, her name is in there. And I thought that she preferred not being
Yeah,
named.
Yeah, I think
It's in the
that,
middle of page 2.
Doesn't seem very relevant to the,
Yeah,
right,
it's like, if she doesn't want to.
she wasn't here, she wasn't,
yeah,
right,
I know.
I support removal of the name.
yeah, it was a pretty deliberate decision to not be specific about the form of training, but to
Right.
continue to pursue training and that was going to be followed up on by the ACO, so I think it would make sense to pull that reference out of the
Formal minutes.
formal minutes. Not seeing where that was, but.
It's in the paragraph in the middle of the page, there's paragraph starting, Eileen stated her friend.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. You can just
So
take
just
out
take
the
out the
word,
name,
just the
or
name.
that? Okay.
I
yeah.
think just the name, and everything else is fine.
Great. I got a motion to accept, as amended.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. No,
Out of curiosity, did they register the dog?
So, Corinne called last week to say that she's moving out of town. Taking the dog.
And then that is actually
And
happened.
that.
That's already happened.
She has since moved out of town.
So- So we did not pursue that registration.
Vote to approve board orders, those were circulated and posted to the share drive. Already had a couple of notes about specific items that were in there. So we had the opportunity to review the board orders. Are there any questions?
No, I would move to
Yep.
approve and sign the board orders.
All second, all in favor?
I,
Aye. Thank you. Get those signed. The next item is accepting Jamie Morby's resignation from the Ordinance Advisory Committee and the appointment of me to the committee, which was a I don't know, tentative commitment that we had discussed relative to the scope of work. And originally when we formed the Ordinance Advisory Committee, the thought was that certain select board members may tag in or tag out relative to their interests or experience with certain topics. And since the Ordinance Advisory Committee is going to be moving on to road related activities, and Jamie's got some other projects that she's going to agree to take on, or assignments, special assignments. We thought it was fair to kind of rebalance some of those commitments, and it sounds like Jamie and Tegan can probably represent the opinion of the Ordinance Advisory Committee. They've already had a discussion about making the switch. Fair to say that there weren't any objections or concerns.
No, no objections.
So there is a little bit of a scheduling challenge because the next Ordinance Advisory Committee meeting is this coming Monday, and I'm going to be out of town.
so I'll plan to attend that meeting as a non-voting member. But we'll still participate.
Well,
And
could you
then-
make your resignation effective
After that
the day
meeting.
after that?
Sure.
Sure.
The only reason I appreciate that is I think we're gonna do final approval on the dog ordinance next meeting, so as many
Yeah.
voting members as possible would make more sense.
Okay, yeah, let's do that.
Okay, so I think we could probably make this a joint motion, and then we'll just make it so that the resignation is effective the 4th of July. And my appointment effective the 4th of July. Or does that sound good to everyone?
Perfect.
Can I get somebody willing to make?
I will move
Oh, that
to
sounds
accept
great.
Jamie Marby's resignation and appoint Jordan Toots both effective July 4th
Second.
on the ordinance advisory committee.
All those in favor?
I
Aye. All right, thank you. And so we're gonna accept the resignation of Karen McNeil's resignation from the as TAC alternative to the CVRPC.
Transportation
Transportation.
advisory.
So this is we only have a single alternate for that position or two alternate?
No, we have a delegate, David Ellenbogen
Yeah.
is the delegate, and Karen has been the alternate.
Alternate.
So we just need a new alternate.
Okay. Well, I'd certainly like to express, Karen's service in that role. We'll be making a call, for, open positions and appointments, in the coming weeks. I'm sure Barbara's on top of, making those. It's on the agenda later. But I'd like to, entertain a motion to accept, the resignation, which I assume is effective immediately.
So move.
You, all in favor?
Right?
Aye. We're gonna accept the resignation of Mark Brown's resignation from the Conservation Commission. Sounds like Mark has been a significant contributing member, but it's been challenging to make commitments to meet regularly in person, but he's still been participating. It was just feeling like it was time to step down and open up a spot for others who may be able to attend more regularly. Mark's had, glowing reviews to his commitment to continue to try to stay on top of the business from the Conservation Commission. So thank you to Mark for serving in that role. And I guess I'd entertain a motion to accept Mark's resignation from the Conservation Commission and make that seat available for posting.
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Aye. All right, so next up is the approval of a contract to do the Kent Hill Road French mattress project, which is I guess the approval to sign the quote for the lowest bid, which is going to Bell Advanced Landworks. I imagine we could probably just authorize a representative of the select board to sign that quote.
Yeah, there's only room for.
Yeah, I'd be happy to be that signature. I get a motion to authorize me to sign the French mattress quote. We should probably should we give a amount?
45,000.
This was discussed last meeting.
If
Was it the last one? It might have been, yeah, I think it was the last one.
we didn't approve it, we just acknowledged that Bell Advanced Landworks was the low bid.
Yeah.
And to accept the low bid.
Yeah, we just need a signature. It was really,
145, 740.
thank you.
145.70.
$740.
Just gonna mess this up. All right, so it's a motion to authorize me to sign the quote for the French mattress project to be performed in 2025 by the Bell Advanced Landworks and Hauling Company as quoted for $145,740.
So moved.
Okay.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye. Thank you very much.
I feel like that has been a long time coming.
Yeah, that's-
We've been talking about that project.
Excited to see that.
Yeah, I think the grant's been around for a while.
Yeah.
Got extended because of the flood or
Exactly,
something.
yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, we need to use it now or lose it.
Yeah.
And the next one is an action to approve the letter of support for the Route 14 traffic calming study performed by CVRPC, right?
Yes, so this is, CVRPC on our behalf is going to propose the study to the Agency of Transportation, who needs to approve it since it's on a state highway. And they're just asking the select board to show support. And I'll say that we've been talking about this for a year.
Yeah.
And have had multiple public meetings in East Calais. So I think they've got good support of it.
Yeah.
The planning commission is also.
Planning commission has been the main liaison, yeah.
So can I get a motion to accept, I guess, the letter? Do we need to sign it individually or authorize?
I think it's per you,
It's from-
so
You
get
have
your
to make
signature on it.
sign it.
Authorize Jordan to sign the letter of support on behalf of the CVRPC in representing the results of our Route 14 traffic calming studies.
Second,
All in favor? Okay. Right. Next one is.
So, I'm sorry, when's that gonna be done? This summer?
This summer.
Yeah.
As long as it doesn't flood, we were hoping for last summer.
Yeah.
They said no studies.
Yeah.
I did try to squeak it in before they start rolling through on their paving project.
We're paving this year.
Yeah, exactly. We want to get it in. And
Oh, I see, I see.
and we want
Yeah,
feedback to
right,
get
the
it in well
results of the
before
study.
they start.
Because the
taking
next
it.
step will be to recommend permanent installation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The next item is accepting and signing the Sullivan Powers audit engagement letter. You know, I think that's pretty straightforward. It's very similar to the audit letters that and engagement commitments that we've entertained before from Sullivan and Powers. They do a great job. And they have proposed a fee of under what we budgeted for.
Exactly.
So I think the primary takeaway of that is that we'll be entering the agreement for a total of $19,800 or
18.5,
eight,
am I remembering
I
correctly?
think you said 18.
$18,900.
9, okay.
It's not in the.
18.9.
So can I get a motion to authorize me to sign the,
I think it has, I think it had multiple signature lines.
All three, yeah. we
Make
need
it
three.
once,
only
three
only
signatures.
three? All right, all of us, great.
Yeah.
So a motion to sign and approve the engagement letter for auditing services from Sullivan and Powers for a total of $18,900.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And next item is a recommendation and basically just an authorization, approval of changes to employee compensations for the fiscal year 2026 as outlined by Ari memo prepared.
Yeah, so this was recommended as best practice to have select board, even though everything in here has been approved either through town meeting or through the labor contract. With one exception, which is that I proposed that because the pay period, the 2-week pay period splits to 2 years, that we just go ahead and pay the employees who are getting an increase, an extra week of the increase. Just 4% for almost everybody.
So can I get a motion to approve the changes?
Is this all collected in a document anywhere?
That was in the
Yeah,
administrative.
it's
file.
my memo, my draft memo to employees.
Says. That's practice.
Right,
In the administrative file of the of this meetings folder.
right, there's a compensation.
There's a FY 26 compensation change memo.
Thank you.
Did I not email that to you?
No, I don't know. I got it now.
It was in the
Thank you.
folder.
So like 30 documents.
So, right,
It was a lot. Okay, great, thank you.
Give you a minute to have a look, see at that. But those basically just represent the changes that were approved in our budget.
Right.
For FY 26.
Okay.
Can I get a motion to approve those pay increases?
Approve the pay increases. I've summarized them.
Thank you.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And with the 2 weeks, right?
Additional week
Including the
of
additional.
increase savings. Thanks, that's simpler.
Yeah.
I'm lost again. Come on, come back. Good Files, okay.
We're up to-
Appoint, members of the.
There's one before.
Message to board.
Yes, approve the message to boards, committees and commissions regarding grants. So in the same administrative file, Barbara had drafted some language to be emailed out to the boards, encouraging them to seek grant funding opportunities for funding their ambitions for the foreseeable future. Noting specifically that there are going to be increased, demands for limited resources from the town as we see increases in costs and decreases in grant funding coming from the various sources and trickling down through the state. So it's a little vague, but I thought the language was great, Barbara. And this isn't an indictment of wasteful, frivolous spending, but I think an acknowledgement that the taxpayers are going to be shouldering a lot of increased costs. We're doing the best we can to manage those expenses, and while we all hope that any of these acute constraints are more finite in nature, I think the reality is that they're gonna be in place for at least a few years to come, and every fiscal year is gonna be a pretty excruciating exercise in reviewing needs versus wants. And so I think any and all efforts that we can have to seek grants, and certainly from our volunteers who might have their ear a little bit closer connected to some of the different incentives for their various projects, I think is beneficial. So the only thing that was kind of like a food for thought, previously we've been careful to just kind of authorize or charge folks with seeking grants or applying for grants just because it creates that back eddy of workload to the town or town administration. I don't necessarily think we need to represent that concern in this initial one, but I do think that there, at some point, I think needs to be a process for, reviewing what grants are being applied for. Like, I don't know if it's a formal approval process or something like that from the select board, but so that we don't have the
Well, that's
tail
good.
wagging the dog.
That's a good point.
Many of these are gonna be matching grants,
Almost all of them
Yeah,
are matching,
right.
and there's always some administration involved. So it seems like you would want to approve or have somebody review these.
It seems like the grand tour would want the select board to
Yeah.
sign off on
Right,
it, right?
and
What happened with the historical, the CHPC?
Says, I'm not sure if we have a history of committees applying for grants on their own, I'm not sure about.
I anecdotally remember them coming and saying that, hey, we found this grant, can we get approval to to apply for it? And in some of those cases, they weren't matching at all, so it was kind of a no-brainer, but we certainly don't have like a formal policy or process for, reviewing and approving
No,
those.
but I think in most cases, the applicant is the
Yeah.
town of
That
Calais.
is it,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so it would need select board a motion to have this all for sign.
I think that's
So,
makes sense.
Yeah, so maybe Barbara, if we could just add, there's some language in there that just kind of acknowledges this in a blanket authorization to, apply for grants, but, seek them out and bring them to the select board's attention, for, you know, opportunities for alternative funding.
So would it be okay if we list, and we have invoked Kari's name in here a couple of times already, so.
Yeah.
Let's add that we'll use Kari as like the centralized.
Yeah.
Center of tracking what is being applied for.
Yeah.
And kind of, because they'll need to come to select board approval.
Yeah.
Yeah, or, you know, Barbara, you're an excellent keeper of spreadsheets, you know, if we had a spreadsheet that listed by commission, like. If they could come up with a list of maybe the grants that they're pursuing, some of those can be categorized as annual opportunities or not, one-time opportunities, but like just having an idea of what they are and what project they could be applied for. If the
Yeah.
individual committees are coming up with those lists and we're trying to keep tabs on them to a certain extent, then I think that just kind of streamlines the dialogue around it.
Yeah, I think some level of review would be good, just to avoid the scenario where they get a grant and then you don't know what review is.
Yeah.
That's like the list.
Okay, so if I work with Kari on drafting that little short statement to add to it, then would it need to come back to the select board?
No.
I think we can approve it.
No, and I don't think we needed, like, just a kind of a tacit acknowledgement, proving it, we don't need to have a vote, and it sounds like there's consensus here, so
Okay.
thank you, Barbara, for pulling that
Thank you,
together.
Barbara.
Right, now, the appointment of members to the negotiating team for the purpose of reviewing and negotiating the upcoming terms of the employment agreement for the road department. So this is semi ad hoc work group essentially. Previously for the initial contract, there were 3 select board representatives. I think this time around, we're gonna cut that down to 2 because it's a fairly stable contract. And I would like to approve appointing Jamie, Christie, and Kari, is that right? To the labor contract negotiating committee. And wish them best of luck and smooth sailing.
That's
Yeah.
We'll do it.
Does that sound good to those?
Yeah.
Captive audience? Can I get a second to that motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Christie, Jamie, and Kari.
It's good of you not to appoint the 2 that aren't.
I know.
Yeah.
Should have skipped this. meeting.
That is a break from tradition, but we'll do it this time, so keep up appearances. So the next item is just to authorize the signature for a previously approved Washington County Sheriff's contract. So we reviewed this, Kari. Thankfully, he entertained going out and seeking some comparisons and make sure that, you know, what our rates are comparable with other towns, which, you know, there really wasn't any question, but seems like a fair question to ask and the due diligence, and it was, so. So we have already approved the contract, and it's
We'll
an
just sign it.
authorization to sign this year's contract,
Do we need a motion for that? Since we approved it?
Authorization to sign.
authorization to sign.
And I think it's got lines for all 3 of
Yeah.
us, so I would move that we authorize us to sign the previously approved Washington County Sheriff's contract.
Second.
All there?
Aye.
Thank you. And same goes for just an authorization to sign, the previously adopted, Curtis Pond, ordinance as proposed and recommended by the, ordinance advisory committee, which we reviewed and approved during our last meeting. I get an authorization to sign
Both of the,
both of the, oh, right, that's,
it's 2 separate orders.
Curtis Pond,
Recreation area.
recreation and, camping.
So moved.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And. Right. So that was a joint, and then that is the administrative items.
There's one
No.
more.
Approved and signed.
Oh, sign language.
The language for the sign. which I
Oh,
saw
sign
somewhere.
language, I read that.
I think it was sorry.
It was.
So this is the one you asked me to work with Linda
Yep.
Sheets, and we went and took a look. There's one big sign at the entrance that we wanna redo, and just adding a couple of phrases that match the ordinance. And then there are signs at the two beach areas that are missing some language, but those signs are generally pretty good. So we thought we would just come up with smaller signs to enhance them.
So one point of clarification that. I just wanted, I guess, for myself personally, was, the language for the larger sign, it said no dogs, is that specifically for the dock, or is that for the whole recreation area?
That whole area.
The whole. We,
Um,
Quite a bit.
It was just go.
there was a lot of discussion
Yeah.
about it. In various forums, including the ordinance advisory committee.
yeah,
And it landed on their dogs at the whole area.
okay.
Oh. It's about starting.
And then the other item was, I guess, just the sign design, so that we've been, or I guess there had been some use of informal ones approved by the town to be up there. It seemed to be effective, but I thought it'd be. In the bigger sign, it says, it acknowledges that it's, from or put there by the town of Calais, or the small one. Yeah, is the,
Oh, cool.
So it's older.
Yeah.
We thought town of Calais.
town of Calais sounds good, some sort of an acknowledgement of it,
Yeah.
but that's.
Calais Select Board? I mean, how official do you want it?
I think the town of Calais is fine.
Okay.
We just want to acknowledge that it was put there, more for the other signs that were gonna be in the recreation, like swim area. Which I think, to Barbara's point last time, it's nice to have like that little reminder, so the smaller signs, will they have like some sort of town logo or insignia on it?
So we weren't planning on that because the smaller signs that we're gonna put in the two beach areas. Only say, please no fishing, watercraft should not block swimmer access, so they're not the main signs, but we could add that to those.
Anybody else feel particularly compelled to add that?
Is there a reason not to have? The full name sign at the front, also at the two beach areas?
It's just cost.
Yeah.
We can certainly get it quoted both ways if you like. I know there's $600 in the budget.
Yeah, I have no idea what the cost differential would be, but it seems like it wouldn't hurt,
Just
if
duplicate,
you're swimming and somebody's there with a dog, it would be nice to
including the
have
hours.
something there to reference.
I don't think you need the hours, but I think you need all the prohibitions. I tend to think that if someone sees a sign that says no fishing,
Right,
they won't be thinking about all the other things that they're not
Yeah.
supposed to be
right.
doing.
I think I'd be a proponent of 3 identical signs.
Okay,
If it fit in the budget.
including the welcome and the hours, or maybe everything other than that, we like that. In the hours, it kind of makes
It
sense,
kind of makes,
just so someone can
sense.
point and say,
right, and it gives consistency across the
okay,
signage.
Does that mean that people
Well-
can fish outside of the hours?
They're fishing, but no.
If-
I don't feel strongly, I just,
okay, well, we'll get it quoted both ways, and if it's well in excess, then we'll bring it back.
And so I guess this doesn't necessarily need a motion, but like we could just get kind of some,
Take the next step.
take next steps, so this is just approval to pursue, I guess, quotes relative to this proof language
yeah,
as discussed.
Yeah,
and
Sounds
and if
good.
it fits in budget, going ahead and order it. Okay,
I see.
right?
Sure.
It's within 600, which I
Yeah.
doubt it will be, but
Yeah.
we'll see. I have no
I have
idea.
no idea what those signs cost.
Uh. Okay, so do you wanna authorize the procurement of the signs that if it fits in within the budget? Or do you just wanna wait? It's just wait.
I'm just gonna bring it back to you,
Okay.
either way.
I doubt those signs are $200 each.
Right,
do.
I wouldn't think so.
I imagine they're gonna be.
These are large signs.
That
Two-
signs,
two
right?
by-
You're saying they're more than.
They're gonna be more than $200.
2x4 is
That's my
gonna be a
guess.
lot.
Yeah, I mean, that, you gotta include the posts and the,
They're on trees now.
oh, they're on trees. And can they be seen on Gale?
Oh, yeah, but,
Okay.
you know, they're good sized.
I mean, if the swim committee's happy with this and it's quicker to just go with this and do it, I'm fine with that. I just.
I'm gonna bring it back either way.
Okay,
Get
some prices.
okay, well, now I wanna be sensitive, we probably have Jay.
Easier,
Yeah.
Is he president?
yeah, I believe so.
We're trying to.
Jay, is that you, can you hear us?
So Jay is here, but he texted me and he doesn't have a microphone or audio, so he's been lip reading all of you for the last little bit. But he called me earlier, so he just gave me a few notes to give to you all. There was an individual today who expressed interest in being the health officer. That person contacted him and he talked to them, and it's looking like they'll come forward and apply for the position. So we will keep you posted on that from the town office. Their house is supposed to close on the 25th. So he will certainly be available through July 25th. And even after that, he'll still have to come back for fire department things. So he will still be accessible if our new health officer has questions or if we have questions. He's certainly available to assist during the transition.
Thank you, Jay, and, you know, I thanks for the service, I guess, to the community. One of the big things, I guess, for me was really just to kind of capture any feedback that Jay may have about the role, recommendations, concerns about the future, trends, that sort of thing. So I guess maybe if we can just reach out to Jay and have those, captured in writing to the extent that he's willing to share anything specific.
Okay.
And
How do we
certainly
do
being
that?
available for somebody to pick.
I
I guess
did have a
right.
good conversation with Jay after he let me know, and one of the biggest takeaways is that the role has actually gotten easier with new legislation that takes the authority over inspection of rentals out of the officers' hands, and now it's state, no, it's the fire chief's responsibility, if there's a concern about rentals.
Yeah, I thought the conversation, last meeting with Central Vermont Waste Management was an encouraging one too.
Right.
That may further alleviate certain issues.
Potentially, yes.
Potentially, but. Okay, well, thank you to Jay, sorry, it's kind of a little challenging to coordinate participation. But we could, I think, kind of keep moving along. We have a period of public comment, which is now a little out of order, but
I think we've got, Grant?
yes,
Grant's here for the curb cut application.
Yes.
okay,
We'll do that.
all right. Technically, we're early now, so I'm just trying to
He's here.
welcome, how's it going?
Staying cool.
Trying to stay cool. So sorry about the mixing around. We're just trying to stay ahead of the heat ourselves with this agenda. It was kind of a burly one. Anyway, I think it's a fairly straightforward, curb cut application. Two major issues, I guess, where there's a recently buried conduit. But it sounds like WEC has acknowledged that as long as there's no need for a culvert, there shouldn't be any concerns or interference with what they buried past the parcel in that particular area. And it sounds like there isn't a particular need for a culvert for a
There's no
curb
ditch.
cut. Yeah.
Sits a little higher than.
Yeah, it does.
The other, thing.
And I'll say that they went ahead and installed concrete over the low
Yeah.
point where they weren't able to get to the depth that we wanted. And we think that concrete's right around where your proposed curb cut is.
So the other issue is just kind of an acknowledgement that there isn't quite enough line of sight from the westward direction. Technically, it needs to be 200 feet, but
To the east, I believe. Towards North Calais Road.
Right.
There's a bit of a rise there.
Mhm.
So if I could speak to that, so there,
Sure.
so I included a link to the curb cut standard that's available
Yeah.
on our website. And that table, I wasn't sure exactly how to read it, but it's based on the
Rated
speed limit, which is 30 miles per hour. So you need 200 feet minimum for stopping distance, but then there's an additional column there that's intersection distance, which
Mhm.
was that issue that that you raised when we talked, which is if you're within that distance of an intersection, then you're okay, even if you don't have the minimum sight distance. And in this case, it's 335 feet. No, yeah, 335 feet. And I didn't measure the distance to North Calais Road, but it's approximately 350. So I'd say we're pretty much there.
Fairly close.
Very close.
Yeah, and I think relative to the direction of travel, the orientation there that, not exactly having a line of sight in one of the particular directions, that it's also pretty close in the other direction by tens of feet. So I think that on paper, everything seems pretty reasonable. I am kind of curious what the intended use of the curb cut is gonna be.
My daughter's gonna put a house there.
Is it gonna be subdivided or?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, that's better. I was more concerned that, I guess, that there'd be. If it were gonna be like a unsubdivided ADU, having a separate curb cut could get in the way of that ADU being clearly subordinate to the main residence. So I guess I would just say before applying for that, you might want to look into subdividing the lot.
Sure with an ADU.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I spend too much stuff, like just time reading about these things. Auxiliary dwelling unit. So like if it were like a mother-in-law suite above a garage or something like that, and you weren't going to be subdividing the lot, to comply with the auxiliary dwelling unit regulations and the land use regs, the unit needs to be subordinate to the main residence, which requires, being under a certain square footage or percentage of square footage of the house, and then sharing other shared resources.
This is gonna be a separate.
So if it's gonna be a separate unit, then it doesn't matter, or a separate lot.
Yeah, have you applied for the subdivision? You gotta.
Yes, I can't do the actual application, it won't be approved until I get the curb cut and the wastewater, which I got the wastewater in the state just a couple days ago, so.
Okay,
Just waiting for this.
Yep.
Formality, I guess.
sure.
Right.
Well, that stands to reason, and I don't see a need to represent any other conditions relative to what's been outlined, and thanks for providing a map with a location of it. That's a step in the right direction from other curb cut applications. So I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the application, the curb cut application for Frank.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck with the bills.
That's gonna be my granddaughter's gonna be living right next to me, so.
Yeah, that's gotta be great.
Have a good night, thank you.
Thank you. Now where are we? Now public comment?
Let's do that.
Okay, so generally we try to reserve some time for public comment to raise any issues that currently aren't on the agenda and may need to be discussed or proposed discussion for future meetings. We have pretty limited public attendance right now, but is there any need for public comment? All right. Seeing none, I'll move on with the agenda as we can. Appointments. So the first kind of order of business with appointments is kind of the ongoing review and refinement of the appointment policy that we've been working on for several months now, which Christy has done a fair amount of work in trying to clean it up and add a little bit of efficiency to the language. So that I had circulated and then also posted to the share folder. Hopefully everybody's had the opportunity to review that. I did kind of take so Chrissy did a great job having everything kind of redlined in there. Most of those redline changes were for either formatting or language adjustments that I would say weren't substantive, but helps kind of keep things concise and at consistency and clarity throughout the document. So I just kind of accepted all of those changes because I thought it made it cleaner to review. Barbara also had the chance to provide some feedback and work through some discussion with Christy as well. So anything that was kind of more quote unquote substantive in, as a proposed addition or change in language, I left marked in red so that we could have some kind of brief discussion or clarification about that. I think we could probably work through that discussion and get some consensus on the language and either choose to add it, delete it, or what have you. And then maybe we can administratively kind of approve it or adopt it with the instruction to kind of clean up. There's still some formatting that is hard to clean up while it's continuing to get edited, et cetera, just with like bullet points and that sort of thing. But I think it'd be easy to clean that up if the language is approved. So we in my mind, we could adopt it with the language as discussed and then ask somebody with cleaning up the formatting after the fact. Does that sound about right to everyone? Does everybody have that document in view?
Yep.
I don't, so I need to get it opened here. So just bear with me here for a second. And I stuck that under the appointments folder. So the first one's on the second page. Clarification of the municipal bodies. This kind of defines the creation of municipal bodies more generally. We've tried to. There was a recommendation to try to get some consistency on whether we call something a board, commission, or committee. I don't know that we can really zero in on any of that language.
Tegan and I were talking about it. Tegan, did you ever find any definition?
Generally, commissions and boards have statutory powers given to them. They have powers that come from a higher organization. Committees are usually the groups made by things like select boards. They're usually more advisory, and all the power they have has been given to them by a different group. That's sort of the basic difference. There's not really a difference between boards and commissions that I could find.
I think I'd be happy just taking the definitions out and just continuing the classification or trying to keep it consistent as we make a new.
Yeah, I think that what's really meaningful here is defining the difference between a standing body,
Yeah.
which is gonna get a committee, commission or committee.
Correct.
Or, designating it as a finite ad hoc with a natural termination or dissolution date relative to the scope of work. So I think we got there on that. So we'll strike the board, committee, and commission definitions. Thank you. The next one is the membership of the body, which I just wanted, Barbara had some additions. I think it was Barbara was proposing these additions. One of which being the express committee to the express commitment to the purpose of the body and a clear understanding of the goals and priorities of its mission. So these are kind of defining the select board's authorization to define what sort of qualifications, if any, may be placed on membership for any particular committee. And
I see, so the 4 and 5 might be part of the interview, are you implying that 4 and 5 might be part of the interview process, but wouldn't necessarily be an official qualifying criteria?
yeah,
I also wonder if 4 could sort of be rolled into 2. It seems like they're getting at the same general gist.
Experience, skill, expertise, skill, experience, and interest. Commitment.
yeah, I guess I don't. I would assume that anybody like interviewing for any of these positions would seek some sort of expression of that commitment. We're not necessarily, so there's two things here. We're not necessarily saying explicitly that each of these things are required for the member or for the existing committees, commissions, or boards. They're just, it's like our ability to set those requirements. So I'm fine leaving them in there. The 5, the ability to regularly attend meetings, certainly that's a question that should be asked. There's another section of this document and policy that acknowledges that if they're unresponsive or not attending, that would put us in the position in consultation with the board chairs to seek removal. So, it seems a little redundant, but I don't see the harm in leaving it in there as a consideration. What still is a little ambiguous to me is the mechanism through which we set these requirements for the individual committees, commissions. So if we wanted to apply these requirements to an existing committee, commission, or board, what's the process through which we do that?
Yeah, where is it?
And I'm trying to protect a little bit of autonomy here for the select board's ability to declare those for consideration, right? And maybe that's not something that we can answer now with just a portion of the board or whatnot, but maybe that's something for further rumination and addition to this in the future. I mean, I think this can be a evolving process. This is a big first step, I think, but I think a big question for me is still, how do we establish that? Because some of those committees and commissions, we're not gonna wanna just like blanketly, probably apply these to all.
Right.
But for some, we may, and we really
Yeah.
might wanna hang our hat on certain decision making relative to those things. And so how do we define that?
And should we get the opinions of the various commissions?
Yeah.
It's a process.
That's right, maybe over time it sort of rolled into our biannual check-ins. A conversation with each commission about what are the priorities and the qualifications you look for when seeking board members for your particular
It seems
commission.
like a good topic for check-ins or the
Yeah.
budgeting,
Yeah.
Right.
as you're thinking about the next year.
Yeah,
So I think we'll just accept those red lines in that particular section, because I
Yeah.
there aren't any objection, we'll just kind of. Earmark some revisiting of that. For a little bit more. Consideration and refinement later. The next one under member terms. Another recommendation, the duration of the terms and. Expiration dates. Of all seats shall be defined. And that this policy encourages the staggering multi-year terms, for standing committees, boards and commissions. Is this not where it states the July 30th expiration date?
No, that's.
No, that's not.
Okay. So there was a note here, from Barbara that I didn't quite understand.
Well, it's taken out of context now because it was there because I was referring to a sentence that's since been deleted.
Oh,
So there was a sentence there saying that boards, committees and commissions should consist of 2 and 3 year terms. And I was pointing out, but we have 4
yeah,
boards, committees and commissions that have 4 and 5 year terms.
Yeah.
So
I like not defining.
so maybe I accepted the deletion,
Right.
because I think it made sense to not define it,
Yeah.
and,
And this
okay.
note just explains.
And it's
what
just
we did.
explain why we
Yeah,
deleted it,
yeah.
great,
So you can just delete that.
delete that one.
Okay.
So moving down through term expirations, this is establishing the June 30th expiration for all seats essentially, so. That was in
As opposed to use the.
4A1.
Yeah, the earlier
Yeah.
draft had a March and a June,
Right.
and we talked about it and just administratively
Yeah,
keeping them on the 30th.
So, yeah, I think in. Official definition, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think what I wanna be careful of is that, like, part of the reason of going through this was to try to create some staggering between. Consideration of various appointments and. As long as I think everybody. Agrees or feels that there's nothing precluding us from making the individual appointments.
Ahead of time.
Ahead of time, between that, March and, June 30th timeframe. Then, and then maybe buying us a little bit more breathing room for doing the committee appointments. With interviews, because there's a lot of them and. We
Yeah.
should be afforded as much flexibility as we can between that March and
Yeah.
June 30th, okay.
yeah, because especially when there's select board turnover, it's
Yeah,
more buffer.
for sure. So the expiration of terms.
I'm gonna take out that, there's a note in parentheses that you wanna remove, at the end of that, number 1, maybe recommend to.
Oh, right. I'll refrain from making that a deletion from this particular one, because I don't think this is like the
Okay.
living document. Still working on a shared document organization. So the one immediately following is the expiring term shall notify the select board administrator or designee 6 weeks prior to the deadline for submitting an application to be reappointed, which I think makes a lot of sense. That also gives us the opportunity to warn and make a call for anybody else who might be interested in that. Barbara had recommended language that prior to such communication, a select board administrator should consult with the select board and relevant municipal body chairs to confirm their preference that the incumbent be reappointed.
So I didn't actually write that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
If you're gonna keep that, and I do recommend it, but I wouldn't use the word should. I would say shall.
Shall, oh, of course you would, Barbara. I am lukewarm on this particular language.
And I wrote it should, so to give you the option. If you fail to do it. The select board would still be able to have the conversation and talk to. To consult the select board and relevant. Yeah.
I guess that the should or shall doesn't bother me so much. It's the confirm their preference that the incumbent be reappointed. I think it's that the establishment of like a preference by the chair. I mean, I certainly would want that maybe we call it like feedback or input on the reappointment, so like if there were a conflict in interest, I think between like the select board and the chair, I think it's just a matter of like managing expectations about making the decision for a reappointment or somehow establishing
So collect input from the. Body chair and select board regarding reappointment or something.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to be working with a member of a board whose term is getting ready to expire and be getting their commitment to
Right.
accept another appointment, only after the fact to find out, you guys not gonna appoint that person.
Right.
I don't want to be put in that position.
Got it.
No, definitely. I think we're clear on the intent there. So I think if we task Barbara and maybe Christie to continue to kind of.
Right, I mean, I would
massage
almost,
that.
yes, and if we just get rid of the to confirm their preference, then to the end, it could be something sort of gentler about.
It could just be to solicit input,
Solicit
Yeah,
input,
yeah. On, reappointees status or something.
Yeah,
On the reappointment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I'll let you two duke it out over the shoulds and the shallows I did. The next one is the appointment application should be due 4 days prior to the appointment meeting. So Barbara, you had a couple of pieces of feedback on this particular section on posting the open seats. I think your intention, if I'm understanding it, was clear that you pretty obviously, you don't want to constrict our ability to make an appointment by making the warning so far, in advance that we can't take actions sooner if we need to. The only one that I thought maybe should have some more discussion was the appointment application should be due 4 days prior to the appointment meeting. My concern there was saying it should be do 4 days prior is that that could potentially put us in a situation where there isn't a ton of time to review the application or coordinate a interview prior to an appointment decision being scheduled. But maybe that's not an issue for anybody else.
Well, what we've been doing is we've been saying on the recruitment that candidates need to expect to be available on this date to
Yeah.
interview. So the expectation is there with the
Sure.
recruitment.
Yeah,
So does that solve that problem for you?
I think so.
So my question then would be, do select board members start reviewing all the material in your folder before Friday when a select board meeting's on Monday? So I was thinking Thursday, as long as it's in there by Thursday, you've got Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday to review it. Are select board members reviewing your board packet before that?
I mean, I'm trying to review stuff from basically the agenda meeting through the beginning of the following week, and
Okay.
obviously I'm the worst offender in like posting stuff after the Friday, but you know, that we're trying to at least warn the meeting by, but like I'm working under the assumption that like if anything's gonna be posted to that meeting packet, you know, Friday or later, that it's being accompanied with an email saying, hey, there's an extra file in there.
Yeah.
So I think as long as we have the understanding that anything that's coming in late, is also gonna be accompanied with that kind of email, then I think that that's fine.
Work on your schedule when
Yeah.
select board members actually really start looking at the folder and reviewing.
Yeah.
You guys decide.
And this is general process recommendations.
Yeah.
So like if, you know, you have no applicants and then all of a sudden a great applicant
sure.
shows up on
Yep.
Saturday morning. Like,
Yeah,
it doesn't preclude us.
I had that,
from-
but I thought sufficient time.
Yeah.
You get to determine what's.
Right, yeah.
If it comes in late and no one had a chance to review, sorry, it'll be next time.
So maybe we take out the 4 days and just call it sufficient time, and you know, we've already established best practices, and if somebody wants to object to that particular item for discussion, then there'll be an opportunity for somebody to make that objection.
Okay, and again, it says should be. I'm not a big fan of the word should.
So we
I
could
just
just,
like to should on myself.
I do it all the time.
I have a comment on this section.
Yep.
It's more of a question, but does this language provide the flexibility for the case where we're talking about an elected seat that's vacant, like a lister? And in those cases, the select board might want to hold an election rather than appoint. Right, that's possible. And you might, in another scenario is it might be so close to an upcoming election, you might keep it open until the election. Those are both rare, but is there enough flexibility?
Those seem like separate decisions to me, so like this first decision is gonna be a decision of whether or not we're gonna open it up for appointment versus waiting to have it filled by election. And then if we decide to make it an appointment,
It goes.
then we go through this procedure.
Okay,
Um,
that makes sense to me. There's a bit of a mixing up here of appointment and officials,
Yeah,
right? Some are elected. But sometimes an elected official
Yes,
seat becomes open and then you have options.
But if it becomes open and it's gonna go to an election, it doesn't even get involved in here. It's only if the select board says, we need to appoint someone, then you go to this.
So I'm thinking of a scenario last year where Bill and Christie were appointed and then there was a call for an election.
Right.
And the select board might have precluded that by saying, you know what, we've got almost a full year here, it's the select board, we're just gonna have a special election. That could happen.
It could happen, but nothing in this precludes it from happening.
Okay.
Also, it costs money.
Yeah, no, right, yeah, I just wanna make sure that there's flexibility I guess I wasn't reading that scenario in the
So,
context. of
I mean,
the entire-
there's, for me, there's this big red button at the beginning of this and it expressed in from the outset, saying that this policy is a guiding framework which shall not limit the power or function of the select board
Yep.
on these matters as defined by the state of Vermont.
that's good.
And so yeah, I think if we need to operate outside of this for, certain circumstances, I think we're pretty comfortably. We pretty comfortably can do that.
We could have a sentence of clarity. First page, section 2D1. Says this policy shall apply to vacancies and unexpired terms for elected official offices as defined by Vermont law. Says I think that mostly says this applies if that position's being appointed.
Yeah. That's right.
I don't know if that clarifies or needs more clarity.
Just points out there's a distinction in the section.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So satisfied with back on page 5. Item 5 that. We could change that to it.
One,
Shall be provided. Or, distributed to the select board with sufficient timing prior to the appointment meeting.
well, I actually think we might want to clarify by saying something like the applicant shall be notified of the date of the interview. And the application shall be due a sufficient time prior to that meeting to give reconsideration or whatever. For the interview meeting, the appointment meeting is an unclear term.
Do that all in one.
I think that
You're gonna go back and work
Yeah.
with that, right?
Yeah. Okay, we can make a note towards submit that to both make it relative to the application due date and the distribution to the select board. For item 5. Moving down to page 6. Select board interviews and appointment decisions. Item 8 under. Or clause 8 under that section. The select board may enter executive session as allowed by Vermont law, deliberate on the appointment or the removal of an appointee. This policy considers municipal appointees public officers with official duties. In so doing, the select board shall only deliberate on a single appointment decision per executive session. I think that's language that I actually added, which is just it is not explicitly statutorily required relative to your interpretation of the law, but it was the recommendation of our law firm to be crystal clear.
So then you have 2 appointments to make, you have 2 separate sessions, is that how it works?
That seems like a really high bar to me, especially if you're looking at several appointments. Decisions in one
Sometimes we
meeting,
do
but
12 or 15 appointments in a meeting, but typically they would not be contested.
Then you wouldn't have a closed session.
Right, for each of them.
Yeah.
What about softening it, just saying the select board should consider multiple executive sessions if there are multiple reasons to deliberate, if it's.
Yeah, I think that's language that we've already, okay. Should consider,
Shall consider.
shall consider,
If it's not,
will consider.
where? We have an age,
Yes,
Yeah, it's number 8, yeah, which is, yeah, extra language. The select board will consider only deliberating.
so. What is our town council? Town attorney told us. This is best practice, but who said it was?
if I remember the issue, there was an appointment mixed up with an appointment issue.
Yeah,
That could be different.
Completely different
That would be
topics.
different, right? I don't know that, if you have 2 appointments to make, I don't know why you couldn't. It would be tougher consideration. This single thing.
I'm fine with just taking the language out. I mean, like clearly,
And then if we wanted to
if
do
we,
it that way.
if we need to add it, I mean, there's gonna be some. It's just like. We need to add it, we certainly can.
So if we have this language in and then we fail to do it that way, get into more trouble that you didn't need to get into.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't disagree.
I mean, obviously, we wanna, comply with all those state legal requirements.
Yeah, we're already kind of establishing a practice that. Is. On the conservative side of an interpretation and is not required, so. But I think we can leave it out for now, and as the open meeting law continues to
Yeah.
get updated and refined, we'll pay attention to making sure that we're not in
I'm
conflict.
pretty sure this group of people will remember to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure will be to pass that knowledge.
Yeah.
Hey, can I bring up, going back to page 5 about the application form? And I'm just wondering, we don't have one now, the processes work pretty well with emails. And do we want to commit to an application form? Is that really what we wanna do? Or do we wanna say, in lieu of an application form, we'll accept emails with the same information?
I think that's a pretty valid point. I also think that like, the. Making somebody who is seeking reappointment, fill out an application seems, a little reductive, but like, I think as long as we are acknowledging some sort of like. Written expression of interest, then.
Yeah.
You know, I think it'd be great if we have kind of an application form, because it. Certainly, or especially for like new appointees, like folks who have come forward and maybe not like. I don't think disclosed enough information, even in a written interest, it would be,
Yeah.
it would be great if we could at least provide them that,
Yeah,
but,
I agree.
So maybe we can call it like adequate or sufficient written expression of interest, in a role.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Including this information.
Administrative appointments, orientation of appointees, that was, I think it was formatting, lingering formatting change.
So I had a couple comments here. So one is, so again, we're not talking about. Or maybe we are appointees. This could be a new new officials, I think is the
Okay,
broad term, you know, we're all, anybody,
Orientation?
orientation, yeah, so anybody who's new to their position should be trained in it, right? Is that the intent?
Appointee. And what was your suggestion?
New officials instead of appointees, because they might have been elected.
Well, but if they were elected,
Then they wouldn't
this,
be.
This policy doesn't apply at all,
Yeah, this isn't for election.
it's just for appointments.
Yeah, right?
Well, that's the sort of this, the blending going on here, because it's talking about bodies, it's talking about,
You are right, and
Positions.
some of the people, what we're thinking of are appointed to elected by, like, the select board, or appointed to fill the lister position. But they're still appointed. We could say new,
I like new.
new officials, yeah.
orientation of new officials
and officials is fine.
and
Those
appointees.
officials,
Just wanna make.
right, or should it just be new appointees?
New officials and appointees, I think covers everything.
You can put it both, then everybody gets oriented.
The clause just before that, so, it mentions following appointment. This is about, capturing and posting, contact information, and I just modified the language. So that it reads that following appointment, an appointee shall provide necessary contact information with a select board administrator or designee as needed or deemed appropriate. And I added that in there because I want to be careful about, protecting people's autonomy. So if it's not necessary to list contact information, there's a little bit of discretion around that.
Which is the way it works now, not everyone's contact information is posted, and we always ask before posting, right?
yeah, and so you married together here, update the town website and town office contact listings. The
Yeah.
town office contact listings needs to be complete.
Yeah.
We don't list like all the Curtis Pond dam monitors and the Curtis Pond Island
That's right.
oversight people on the website.
Right.
But I need their contact information if we need to reach them at 11 o'clock on a Thursday night.
Definitely. I just think that it's good to put in there, you know, as being necessary, and it kind of establishes the, select board administrators' ability to say, like, I need this for certain reasons, and then it also gives the appointee the opportunity to say, sure, for this purposes, and maybe not for.
Right, but
the wrong thing.
the town office contact listings have to be updated, that's necessary for everybody. As needed or appropriate, you update the town website, they're two separate things.
Two separate things.
So just we'll reorganize that
Yeah,
language to
yeah.
reflect that then?
Yeah.
Okay. And with that, that's all the changes. So that's still about as clear as mud, right?
Well, it's a step towards order process.
I think so. So with that, are we comfortable entertaining a motion to adopt this policy effective this evening? Which was kind of our original intent and timeline. Acknowledging that, just, you know, subject to the changes that have been discussed and
Final wording
agreed,
being
and then
reviewed.
we'll ratify once the verbiage is finalized. Does that sound fair? No, yeah, final formality.
Before you make that vote, I'd like to suggest that you number the page, paginate the document.
Yes.
So that gives the select board an opportunity to review the final language.
Yep.
Yeah.
We're signing that out.
I'm okay with that.
All right. So I'd like to entertain a motion to adopt this appointment policy as with the language as proposed and the edits as discussed, with the understanding that it will be ratified and signed by the entire select board at a date certain, with the target of next meeting, July 11th.
14th,
July 14th.
I think it's the 14th, isn't it?
The 14th is the Monday. I was just having an argument. Yeah, it's the 14th is the Monday.
Yes.
Okay.
14.
Okay.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Well, thank you for bearing through that process, and thank you for everybody for the contributions. Next, we have a slate of reappointments. For,
Maybe have a short break.
oh, sure. Right on schedule.
Just confirm who the president is, because I don't think that's Jay.
It's Jay. It's Jay.
Stayed on this whole time?
Yeah.
He did, and he's not able to use his microphone. I think he doesn't have audio either. He just
Right.
has
Might have just.
only
left
been
it on.
messaging us.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why he stayed on, but that's Jay.
Okay,
He did message us.
thank you.
We're trying, we're getting there, Doug.
I haven't been rude yet.
No. I didn't say you were. You said yet, though. Are you planning to be rude?
Thinking about it.
I made a cobbler. Do you want to do that now, or do you want to do
You
that?
made a
Kinda
call?
wondered, I'm
Yeah.
kinda wondering, when I saw you at the restaurant, that's when you put your hat on your glasses.
Why I put my hat on, my glasses on my head?
Restaurant,
In, when?
Gary. The breakfast,
I didn't have any breakfast in Barry.
you got twin brothers.
I don't have, not to my knowledge. Where were you getting breakfast in Barry?
First time I ever been in. We're across. Nice little dining, just a bit, good near. You sat right in the chair right there, and I sat right here. And was with me, you had a woman with you. Oh, yeah, with you.
When? What day?
Thursday maybe? Thursday, Friday? Thursday. Yeah.
No, last Thursday, I was, trying to camp with my daughter and somebody else, so we were in Burlington and then in Elmore. I wasn't in Barry Thursday.
Maybe Friday?
No. No, I was only in Barry, Monday and Wednesday.
I was like from here. To that thing over there, probably 6 feet away. And this guy. And his hat on, I looked over there and he put a cotton knife. And covered his face up, put his glasses on. You got up and left. You have room.
Sounds like somebody who was pretty nervous about being seen.
I thought that was you.
It was not
Not
me.
his wife, girlfriend, man. Man, looked at me, so she said to me, is he John's boy?
No,
Jesus, I hope not.
no.
Huh?
Wasn't me.
Oh, I like to take a picture of
Oh,
that. Oh,
now I need to know who's going around Barry looking like me. Well, so, so I guess, Kari, also mentioned he brought a cobbler, which you didn't, no. So I'm also gonna take the opportunity to take a little break here, but then I think Kari's gonna distribute some cobbler, so.
And we
And then we'll
did
get
that
back
in
at it.
honor of Christie's birthday.
Oh,
Happy birthday.
happy
Birthday
birthday.
today.
Thank
But we
you.
knew it was happening.
Thank you.
Never say that a cobbler.
Cobbler sounds good.
Rhubarb.
Happy to provide.
In lieu of dinner.
Rhubarb cobbler. Okay, so Barry, they're all ready for your bebop,
Yeah.
rhubarb cobbler.
This is a rhubarb cobbler. One of Central Vermont's most important agricultural products.
That's right.
It's a really good recipe.
What
The
is
Bradley family cookbook, and it's in honor of your birthday.
So I'm here. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm happy to see you.
We colorized it. Want me to serve you?
Very good. Ah,
Truth be told, I got up early and baked it this morning.
wow. Oh, yeah.
Everybody else had a commitment.
You're not gonna serve us all.
Well,
I don't know what size it is.
You think we're gonna back away from food?
Come on, Shayna, while they're not talking.
You ever had rhubarb?
Good, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah,
You ever had rhubarb before?
yes, my great grandmother used to make.
Yeah.
Nobody's allowed to tell anybody in my family that I've had anybody else's rhubarb anything.
Uh-oh.
So as long as we can keep it here and to all of the recordings.
Just pull that hat down over your thing.
Never worked for me before.
Oh, where's it this time?
No, it didn't work this time either, apparently.
No,
I'll have to try harder.
Okay, this is yummy.
Mm.
You guys want some? It's really good.
who made you?
Yeah, I did.
We're all eating.
Homegrown rhubarb.
This morning.
I'll have some for sure.
Mm.
Thank you, Kari.
Wow, thank you.
Happy birthday, Christine.
Thank you, Darren.
And happy birthday, Kristen. Thank you. Wife's birthday on the 20th.
Ooh.
Very nice. That's a good one.
Okay.
Got enough sugar, you think?
Perfect.
Good balance?
Yeah.
We have so many
Who
rhubarb things.
scheduled me to the last end of the day? You know?
Not intentionally, I promise, Doug.
We'll come.
No.
And I'll say we're half an hour early based on the agenda.
I'm trying to get there as fast as I can, Doug, I promise. We've been skipping all over the place.
You know.
And we left it on the meeting because we knew, that you'd be coming and that you'd want to talk about it. We've got stuff to talk about, so. So we, before taking a break, we had a possible action of making appointments to the remaining open positions and as well as reviewing the current appointment vacancy report and discussing a recruitment process. So for the next action, there is a slate of reappointments that were put off with the intention of making them after adopting an appointment policy so that we can get them on a effective new timeline. These individuals have expressed an interest in being reappointed and have received the endorsement of their associated chairs.
So we could do the appointment with the June 30th.
The new in June, yeah. And the term expiration, so. Everybody's expressed an interest. This falls a little bit outside of our policy that we just adopted. Though I think we have, certainly given folks the community notice that these were positions up for reappointment and haven't seen an abundance of applicants for any positions. So I'm feeling relative to the reappointments that are there. It would make good sense to adopt or to make these appointments as a slate of reappointments since they're existing. Does that sound about right, Barbara?
I'm not sure that I'm following you.
This is the document that's the list of.
This is who I
Reappointment.
have presented to you guys.
Yeah.
We're ready to be reappointed back in April,
Right,
but postponed it to such a time as this.
right.
And so the question at hand is what?
The question at hand, I think, to the board is whether or not they're comfortable relative to the feedback that we've gotten. And the interest to be reappointed, if everybody's comfortable adopting these reappointments. As a slate of reappointments.
Yeah. I
And
think so.
specifying that the expiration is June 30th of the year stated.
They've all gone through the general process outlined in the
Yeah.
policy.
That's right.
And we've kicked the can down the road a couple of times now, so I would be in favor of making these appointments, and perhaps Barbara can update the spreadsheet for the future. The term expires column. I could give the actual date, right, because now terms expire June 30th.
I don't think we need to because it's defined in the policy. The policy very clearly says that it's just all June 30th relative to the year of expiration. So, you know, as long as we're capturing the year and we've adopted the policy, I think we're in pretty good standing there. So Chrissy, are you feeling comfortable making these reappointments as a slate?
Yes.
Great. So Jamie moved, I believe.
Yeah.
I seconded. To the reappointments as presented and prepared by Barbara. And we'll have to share that for the minutes so that those can be identified and called out. But it's, but we're not gonna.
We're not gonna
make
need
It's
the
in
whole.
the folder, she can't get it out of the folder.
I can try. There's,
I'm happy, I'll just email it to you. I mean, okay, got it.
All in favor of making those appointments?
I,
Aye. Thank you.
yay. So these appointments are effective July 1st because they.
These are effective July
Well,
1st.
effective now.
Yeah,
All of these people are actually, as of today, they were
They're
already
already
serving.
serving.
They're already serving. It's just now coming up. I'm not sure how to answer the
We've
question.
never.
I'll just say yes.
They're already serving and their new term.
Right, so this, like, their new term is effective July 1st.
Yeah.
You say that.
And
Yeah,
it expires
Yeah.
June 30th.
Yeah, that's true, and expires June 30th in the year, and the years are specified here. There are different.
Yeah.
There's a 4-year term. All right,
so the last item in the appointments folder is the vacancies report. Doesn't include any of those. And discussion on or approval, I guess, that to post continued posting and calling for people to apply for these vacancies, right?
Well, I think we need to take them individually because we're not posting for a constable. So we need to look at them one by one and give me direction how you want me to handle each one.
Okay, constable, first and second.
I think we're still tabling those.
We didn't budget for it.
We didn't budget for it.
I really continue to question, and I go back and forth,
Yeah.
but we really hadn't needed it in my recent experience. The illegal dumping would be the main thing that comes to mind, and now we do have a resource with the solid waste district, so that's good.
But we still have the position on the books, so it needed to be in my report.
Yep. Health officer. In process, and that has been posted.
So of course, I wrote this memo 2
Yeah.
weeks ago.
Yeah.
So as of today, we have an applicant. I
Great.
got it just before 4 o'clock today. She's given me her statement of interest, but it didn't include her skills and qualifications, so I've asked her for that and asked her if she would be available to interview at the next July 14th select board meeting.
Great.
So given we have had that posted for 6 weeks or so, I don't think we need to repost it again. We now have an applicant who is very qualified.
Yeah.
Oh, excellent. There was a discussion last week about having a nurse instead of a health officer. Is that all behind us?
We've gotten some feedback. We decided not to put it on this particular agenda because it was pretty full. So that will be taking that up in July as well. If not the 14th, then the
Okay.
following meeting.
So meanwhile, we have a health officer.
Yeah.
Thank you.
CVRPC TAC alternate, which is a newish opening, that we at least knew about, but I think we should definitely post that. And
Yeah, and Karen
Everybody.
gave me a beautiful write-up of what basically the job description is, so I know what to say in the recruitment. Not only did she write it, but then David Ellen Bogan, who's our CAC alt delegate, approved it. So
Okay.
does the select board need to approve it?
No, we don't need to.
Okay. All right.
the next are open positions or seats in boards, committees and commissions. And we've got a recently open seat in the Conservation Commission. Does that include the?
Yes, and we
Resignation
have an
market.
applicant already, and we
Great.
submitted everything that we need, but I did tell them that we have a policy of posting every
Sure.
open position. So don't be surprised when you see that we're gonna post it, because my understanding is that you still wanna post it, you don't wanna just take an applicant without posting it and giving everybody a chance to apply.
I think that's the most equitable for sure. Yep.
Okay. Right, so I'll post it.
Yep.
And if you guys recall, last year, I remember I had an open spreadsheet, an open position spreadsheet. And at that time, Ann Winchester approved for wording for each of those open positions. So if Ann Winchester approved recruitment for a conservation commission, is that good enough, or do you guys need to approve what I can run it past Larry again, but will the select board want to approve the wording on a recruitment?
I don't think so. I don't think that anything substantively has changed on the charge of the committee, so.
Okay, I'll run it past Larry and
Yeah.
Kari before it goes out there.
Okay. The Development Review Board has two open alternate seats, one ending in 2026 and another in 2027. And I think it's due diligence to continue to, solicit applications for that. Yep.
Do you, but do you want to do that now, or do you want to wait and talk about a board matrix document before we start recruiting people?
I think it's gonna be, I think we need to make a call for that. I think that the DRB would probably feel most comfortable if we're soliciting applications for those positions,
Okay.
so that they have, they have alternates available to them.
Okay, so we just did a big recruitment back during January,
Yeah.
February, or March. I can use the same wording that we used when we got, was it Harris?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
Emergency. Well, I guess, yeah, okay, we'll leave it at that. Emergency Management Committee, so that's still an open seat. We recently reduced that, from 10 to 9, but that still leaves one open seat, available, so. As long as we're working with James, yeah, same wording.
Cheers, okay.
Historic Preservation, 2 terms, one ending in 2026 and 2027. The scope of the commission hasn't changed at all, so as long as
Yeah,
they're
I've been running
comfortable
it.
with the description, then I get that posted on.
The EMC asked James, because he was not our EMD at the time we ran the other one, so I'll make sure, see if he has any changes on that one, and I'll run the HPC past Tobin.
And I believe we'll be making a decision later tonight on the Lister appointment. So I believe that kind of wraps that.
Okay, so I'll do the 4 board and committees and commissions and the 1 annual appointment.
Yes, please.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So
Thank
much,
you,
Barbara.
Hopefully this list keeps getting shorter, right?
Right, now, is the intent to do them all separately or sort of combine in one?
I
Open
think I'm
position.
gonna do it all together.
Okay.
I believe that's what I will do, otherwise we're just gonna be nickel and diming in so many postings and so many
Yeah.
postings.
That's exactly it.
And maybe we can whittle a couple down
Exactly.
and then repost
Yep.
again, so.
Yeah, okay, thank
Thank
you.
Appointments. Pekin Brook. Spring, again, long meeting, trying to kind of keep the conversation on this particular item succinct and brief. We're continuing to get some feedback from members of.
Can somebody up there can hear me?
What?
Can somebody go to kick him on them?
On Zoom? I don't know. Maybe.
People don't do what they tell them.
Oh,
They just don't do it.
It's really only Craig Line and Jay's still there.
are you expecting somebody else to show up?
A lot, 4 or 5 of them.
Okay.
Well, it's not 8:45.
Jordan, could I start this one out?
Yeah, so we were hoping to basically roll through a
They
couple of,
probably didn't show up because you scheduled them to 8:30.
that's fine, but we'll try to. We'll leave time and revisit if we need to solicit input, but I think we're heading in the same direction here, Doug.
Okay, let me just kick my end.
Hold on, Doug, just give me a second, because the way that I wanted to kind of format this is conversation is we've been doing a little bit of homework on our end, and so I wanted to share an update on some of the feedback that we've gotten so far. And then just have kind of a discussion about what we think are reasonable next steps to kind of keep us moving forward on this particular item. So Kari, do you want to share the two main things?
Just to summarize what I put in my memo to you, the steps that I've done since we talked about this last is, first of all, Toby and I each independently went out to the site and just trying to find a pipe. We couldn't find the end of the pipe. And that John Stafford had said that it got buried in one of the flood events. So it's there somewhere. We'll need to find it. Doug's shaking his head. It's there. And then I contacted our attorney because of, my liability concerns. And in the frame of, this is not just a sort of a legacy spring, if we were restoring access and promoting it as a water source in some sense with the town, what would they recommend the town do to protect itself from lawsuit or something like that? And they had 4 recommendations, and the attorney based it on a conversation that he had with our insurance carrier at Asset. So that's where this is coming from, but the first one was that the select board formally approve the reopening of or restoring of access, the resolution. Then we have a letter of support from the landowner that you design a pull off that's safe And then you have signage disclaiming that it's not a tested water source and people are accessing it there with risk, okay? So those were the 4 things. And then the other update is that I was able to speak with Dale Laferia today, he's the landowner. And he and I had spoken in the fall, but he basically reiterated this time that he is perfectly okay with people getting water from the spring. Doesn't have a problem with that. And he believes that there's adequate space for 1 car to pull off safely. I kind of want to go back and reevaluate that. That was not my impression. I thought it would be doing more to allow a car to get off the road. But that's his position on it. He hasn't been there recently to see, I mentioned that we didn't see the pipe. He hasn't been there just to check that out. But he said he would go. His main concern is still trash dumping. And he said that it's much improved this year. He only pulled out 2 tires. As opposed to the last time he had to clean up, it was 20 tires. So, so that's still his primary concern. And he said, I invited him to come tonight. He said he couldn't join, but that he's open to anybody contacting him about this. He contacted us because he saw the agenda posted on Front Porch Forum, and he said, he wants to be consulted. He's open to discussing this with anybody who wants. And he expressed some frustration that folks haven't contacted him directly. And I apologize, I didn't have his phone number, but now I do. And Doug, if you want to contact him, you're welcome to do that. As is Stephanie.
Okay, then.
Okay, so I went there, when I was still working. And I went to the house and his wife was there, not him, he was working, he was working there. And there was a white PVC pipe that came out of the bank. Well, when I went down there, the second or third time, it's gone. The yellow and white PVC. And then I asked her if she had 4 wheels, side by side. She said she did. Well, there's side by sides went in there, and now that put in a lot of snow. I know they did. And they pulled that pipe out of the van. So now, not last weekend, but the week before, my son, who works for Stowe Electric, he goes down there, and we have a detector. Okay? We're gonna follow that pipe. And his pipe coming out right there, it's almost a full screen. You didn't see it? Of course you didn't know. I'm telling you, I go right down now and fight it down. Okay? Huh?
Still light up.
I'm not, I tell you, I guarantee you. And anyway, it's almost, I thought it was an iron pipe. So he gets the detector out, we go around, he goes up to the woods, he gets anything. You come back, that pipe is plastic PVC pipe, black. So I thought it was, and this is what I find. I have springs on my property. I can't touch that. They got a spring in, it goes across the road to Lighting Ridge Road. Right top of the hill, that's why that water always comes down through. The spring is on Bill Griffin's land, but it's still gotta come across my land to get to. Dave Rogers asked me, I said, I don't care, I can't do it, but we went across the road, now we have that mud hole every spring, keep bringing gravel to it, and we can't touch it. My neighbor, Mike over there, Mike and Carolyn, they got one in the swamp, And I asked him to move it. Dig it up to the swamp. I said, what if it's no box around it, it's just old rotten boat. I said, what if my Angus is a cat? She said, she don't want it thrown up. What the hell, why not? It's in the mud. So now we got that problem, but you guys haven't taken care of the town forest. I gotta hire somebody to straighten that out. It's gonna cost a lot of money, and I don't, you guys should take care of that. We took that town forest. And we did, and what we're gonna do there we're gonna brush go from that. And we're gonna run
Well, I wanna,
PVC pipe,
I wanna keep the conversation, focused on what the next steps are gonna be for the Beacon Brook Road spring. That we're here to talk about, so.
Is the town looking at reestablishing that as a formal?
Yeah, so here's the thing, Doug, you know, I think. I hear the arguments and I think to a certain extent, many of them are valid and it is a resource and it's close to the right of way and. But what I want to make sure we're being mindful of is not taking a specific action to commit town resources to restoring anything or reconstructing anything or taking maintenance ownership of anything without having reasonable representation of the public, you know, wanting that access restored and respecting the property owner's right of use to that property. Now, I think, you know, we've been in good faith trying to work through this dialogue. And so we seem to have, you know, be taking a step in the right direction, with like getting some consensus from the landowner that.
Find the pipe.
We'll find the pipe and we'll restore access to it, but we're trying.
A lot of people know where that spring is and got water.
Well, then he said they'll find it.
Harvey George.
Doug,
Harvey George got a.
we don't need citizens cowboying access to to a spring. What I think we need to do is, in a reasonable manner, take a look at what access is, define that, you know. We can continue to work on that. We have some pretty specific feedback from our town attorney on what steps we should take to protect ourselves in this, you know, and, you know, assuming some maintenance costs to committing infrastructure and making access to it, which includes getting a statement of support from the landowner.
You don't know who owns the land. You don't know who owns that land.
Yes, we do.
No, did you look it up in the deed?
No.
No. See, he don't know and you don't know. I know.
Doug, I feel like we're trying to make progress on something that you care about, and now you're undermining that.
Gotta give him a chance.
I just think there might be a scenario where the pipe's there, the owner's okay with people accessing it, and if there's enough room for a car to pull over, the town doesn't need to do anything.
Right. Maybe
Well, the
put up a
town,
sign.
the manager, the town road guy from Pennsylvania went in and.
I'm not gonna entertain or allow
You don't have
commentary
to,
on
because
it.
I'm getting an attorney. I will spend the money on it. I will sue your ass.
Doug, he said he's
No.
gonna fix it.
No, he ain't.
That's what he said.
We'll
That's what
see.
you're
Don't
doing.
smile about it, because I'm looking
Where-
at you too.
Doug,
This is-
I feel like we get to this point every meeting, Doug. Do you just want to get kicked out? We're done. Okay, great. We've spent all the time that we're gonna have, spending talking about this. Thanks, Doug. We're moving on with the agenda. Nice work.
Yeah. How many times that now for?
Sure. I'm not counting. Great. So, moving on to reports. Deegan? Might have
This is no longer on.
lost you. Barbara, do you know if there are any particular updates?
Or not, just a reminder that we're working on the volunteer appreciation event.
Yeah.
And I've talked with not only Kari and Tegan about it, but also Friends of Calais, who are going to co-sponsor the event by letting us use their listserv and using your name to solicit dishes. We've moved it from having a potluck dinner to just appetizers and dessert. So it's gonna be like a sweet and savory. And so we're putting plans together. We've got permission from the Memorial Hall if weather is good, we're gonna have lawn games to play. We're gonna ask people to bring a childhood photo, and we'll put them up and see who can guess who's who. So we're trying to make it as interactive as possible. It'll be very informal, we've made it easier so that we can fit it within our $500 budget. So if you have any suggestions, ideas, creative ideas, things to continue making it be fun for everybody, please let me know.
All right.
It sounds fun.
And hopefully Jordan or somebody from the select board can say a few words.
Yeah, we've emailed, I'm available, it's on my calendar, I'm happy to have some remarks prepared, I also have, you know, a set of formal bullet boards that I can drag down there to contribute to the yard games and that sort of thing. Yeah. And I, as I shared with Barbara, like, I think it'd be great if other members of the select board can attend. I'm not worried, given the nature of the gathering, and get a warrant. You know, as long as we're not talking shop, but like, I think it's good to show as much appreciation as possible for the folks that serve the community, in official capacities. Very good. Well, thank you, Barbara. And Barry?
Yeah, so just a few items, talk about anything that's in the memo, but I misspoke about the East Calais stormwater projects, those won't be done until the end of this week.
Okay.
We've got our walkthrough scheduled for Friday. Yeah, I think it's gone smoothly, and they were able to add that extra project we added to, we asked them to do, so that's good.
For now, we'll see what happens when it rains.
Yeah, right. And it does obligate us to do some things, right? We have to check the filters. Clean them. That actually, I need to go back to that because the planning commission was going to try to access us some money for us because some of those maintenance items cost money. So we need to follow up on that. And then the road crew, been working on just a variety of smaller projects. We're waiting for certain grant monies that will be, you know, projects that they'll work on in the summer. But John's been on vacation, which is great because he didn't get to take a vacation last year at all. So he just got back, and we have one road crew member who's had a medical issue, and we have one that's currently on bereavement leave. So, yeah, it's happening. And then I'll be on vacation next week, just so everyone's aware. I'll be out and from Sunday until July 8th. So and when I get back, it'll be a very busy period and work on fiscal year end and everything else. So any questions or comments about any of that? I'll go into the financial report.
No.
So 1 month to go, I think we're in pretty good shape. We I would expect a surplus on the general government side. I mean, it's gonna happen. Basically all our payments have been made. Highway, despite being over budget on many items that they're reporting, we're actually going to run at most a small deficit. And it's because of all this additional revenue, mostly grants that came in over the year. So that's great. And on the general fund balance sheet, it was in good shape at the end of May. We of course had some additional expenses in May, but we also got a $70,000 payment from the Federal Highway Administration on Friday last week. So that's really good to see. And I will have a draft fund balance policy for you to consider next time. The auditor's already reviewed it, now the attorney has it, and so that's good. Questions about that?
It's all pretty straightforward. It's a very clear memo. So there's a lot to digest.
That's the goal.
But it was all very, very clear to me, to anybody. Yeah.
I just one quick thing that we didn't talk about tonight at the meeting was the Moscow Woods Bridge dam removal, etc.
Yeah.
And there are gonna be meetings, and I would volunteer to go to the.
That'd be great.
Third meeting.
Yeah, that'd be good.
And.
Do you wanna go to both of them? Do you wanna go to the small group one?
I was gonna go to the small group on the 23rd. The community meet, what's the difference?
Well, the small group, I wanted to have, one or two
Right.
select board
Right.
members there and then community, and it'll be. The key stakeholders, like the Reese's, Reese's. And those, Friends of the Winooski town,
I'm available for the 23rd for sure.
okay,
And so am I.
okay,
But I can't make the 30th.
well, that, I'm sure we'll have more representation, so. Going with Christie for the 23rd, okay.
And it's very interesting that FEMA money may still be.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
I thought all hope was lost, but sure enough, they changed their formula and.
It's incredible that Friends have that much, like they have the capacity to like manage all of those applications, knowing how many projects they're involved
Yeah.
in.
Right.
It's
And they're actually looking to move forward without even the FEMA money.
Yeah.
They have other
Yeah.
sources, mostly around habitat. Because the dam blocks the flow of,
Habitat and water quality, they said.
Yeah. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Their organizational skills.
talk about resilience.
Yeah. And I appreciate you reaching out to the bond bank and getting that, proposed kind of
Yeah.
like amortization schedule. I continue to feel like as those types of projects come up and we just need to have a better idea, like a clearer view of like what our debt service is going to be on an annual basis, and definitely in aggregate as we consider making proposals to take on any of these particular things. And awesome, thank you for reaching out to CVRPC about pursuing the potential switch to
Oh,
a
yeah.
federal aid highway,
Haven't heard back on that,
designation.
but-
That'll be, I think that's a really interesting line of dialogue. It makes, logistically, it makes way more sense that would be the case. So thank you for keeping that moving forward.
Yep.
$1 million. Sorry. I think that is everything for reports, and the memo was pretty quickly. So the last item before considering executive session is the transfer to highway funds. So we're running a deficit on the highway funds, and we need to approve the transfer of funds from the general fund so that we're not carrying a deficit forward, which is the recommendation of both the treasurer and Nemrith, or auditor, yeah. Which makes good sense, and we have the funds to do it. Do we have an anticipated deficit, a specific deficit amount,
I don't have a specific one,
or a not to exceed?
you could do a not to exceed. I'm thinking it's gonna be less than 5,000, but we wanna wait until the audit is substantially complete in case they detect something that was inappropriate, inaccurate, or, so their recommendation was just approve the, transfer, generic transfer. If you wanna do it, not to exceed, if that makes you feel more comfortable, it's kind of a formality, because it's all, it doesn't change our cash.
Right.
Yeah. It's accounting.
Yeah, well, I don't have a particular objection to that. So I'm pretty,
We could maybe approve it and just with if it ends up being way larger
Okay,
than
yeah, I'm
we
happy.
anticipate it
Yeah.
being, come back to us.
I would, or maybe just say that, with a request to report back, the same as the audit is
Yeah.
closed. Cause
Yeah.
I don't think we need
Yeah.
to change the
I
action.
think we know in August.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the transfer from the general fund to the highway fund. The total to be determined to cover the deficit in the highway fund balance
For 2024.
for the fiscal year 2025, with a obligation to report back on the final total of that deficit, as soon as the audit is complete.
Second.
All in favor?
Thank
Aye. Thank you.
you. Very good.
Thank you, Kari.
That's great.
So. Oh. Well. Do we need to discuss the applicant for the road crew member hire, or like not acknowledge what that executive session topic is?
Up to you.
Deliberate.
So we have one applicant for the opening, Ogden Percy, who's worked for the town before, and I provided some background
Yeah,
in my memo. So do you have questions for open session, or do you want to go into executive session? That's your call.
yeah, so I have I guess the context and I think Kari's representation of the applicant and experience and efforts to and do due diligence and checking in with the road crew and making a decision on this was pretty clear. Does anybody feel the need or a reason to go into executive session to discuss the the potential approval of hiring the applicant for the open full-time road crew position?
I don't think I do unless there's. Yeah, I don't think I do.
I have read Kari's memo and would be comfortable with the applicant. I'm also happy to go into executive session if people feel like we need to have a deeper conversation.
I'm not feeling particularly compelled to go into executive session. I'd like to acknowledge that, we've had an open, full-time position for the road crew posted, with not much input or,
March, I believe.
not many applicants. Ogden, who previously had worked for the road crew, has come forward and expressed a renewed interest in that position, and he did so directly to Kari, and Kari, knowing the history is with Ogden, has discussed the possibility of the consideration with John and the rest of the road crew. And as well as, Ogden's commitment to the position and willingness to pursue, more training and stay in the position long term. And I think that is all very positive, and I think it's great that we seem to have the approval and comfort of the road crew members that we'd be working with. And I think it's good to get Ogden in, frankly, now before plowing season. We've got a pretty sparse crew, and it could potentially be a active summer. Hopefully not, but there's still a lot of work to be done under normal circumstances. And it would be nice to kind of have somebody in place before we transition into the winter activity. So everything else is governed by our employment contract. And because he does not have a CDL and would technically be going through, I guess, a probationary period, that's defined by that.
All new employees, 6 months.
Yeah, there's that lower pay rate that's designated for non-CDL employees of the road department, so.
Is he gonna be on a probationary period?
Yes, 6 months.
So I think I would like to entertain a motion to authorize Kari to hire Ogden for a full-time position of the road crew at the lower pay rate until Ogden has sufficiently completing his CDL commitment and then can entertain the increase at that point,
Yeah.
but I think that makes a lot of sense. Does that sound right? Sorry?
It does.
Okay.
I mentioned this in my memo, for the record, full disclosure, I've known Ogden since he was a teenager. He and my son Jacob were friends in high school, and I've hired Ogden to do mechanical work for me because he's a pretty skilled mechanic. So I won't be doing that in the future if I'm a supervisor, but I want everybody to know
But it's a
that.
good saying, good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I really do appreciate you working with John and the rest of the road crew and making sure.
That seemed
they feel
important.
confident. That was really good.
Because it's such a strong team right now.
Yeah.
I don't want to introduce anything that's not.
Absolutely. So, thank you. So,
Well,
Can-
I would make the motion as you so elegantly laid out, to hire,
it's generous.
Ogden as a full-time road crew member.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Great, thank you.
Very good. Right, sorry, I was just reading ahead on the agenda to make sure I'm not forgetting anything. So the last item would just be, the consideration of going into executive session to deliberate on, the, Lister, position. I think that would be appropriate, considering there are multiple applicants. I think we can, this will be the last item, that we take up on the agenda. We won't be making a decision in executive session, but we potentially be coming out, making that, decision, so I think it would probably just be the three of us and unless you wanted to, do you have an opinion?
I don't have a strong opinion.
Okay. So I would like to excuse everybody, and then we'll keep notes on, coming out of executive session and our decision. Does that sound good for everyone?
Well, we have to come back in and announce it. to
Right,
someone,
we'll
don't we?
we'll probably want a Zoom recording. They're coming
Turn it
out.
back on. I can just hang out.
Okay. That'd be
Is that
helpful.
okay?
Yeah, it's fine.
Just wanted to make it.
Hey,
so
we're
that
like
just
an hour ahead of where.
I know, right.
I'm trying so hard to conserve that hour, otherwise it was all for naught, you know? And also make it, not make it seem like Ari gets invited into every executive session by default. Yeah, with that, for the purpose of considering an appointment decision around the position of Lister, I would entertain a motion to go into executive session under 1 BSA 313A3, which is relative to.
I move that we go into executive session and
Thank you.
deliberate things here.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. 9:02.
All right, I'm gonna
Thank
hit
you.
pause.
So we have deliberated on the decision for making an appointment to the Lister position, and I'd like to Christie to summarize the decision and reason and decision.
Okay, so we are fortunate to have 3 highly qualified people applying. We gave all 3 applications careful consideration. And we would like to appoint, for the term, expiring March 2026, to open Lister position. Rachel Carhart, who impressed us with her ample, relevant professional experience. In particular, working with property value.
Oh, I'm sorry, what was that?
Value
Okay,
and her commitment to putting in the time necessary to learn the job and continue to run for election, the aspiration of the term. We believe that we will work well with the other listers.
Okay. So I'd like to entertain a motion to appoint Rachel Parahart to the open lister position with a term ending in March 2026. And
I will make that one.
Second.
all in favor? Aye. Thank you, everyone. And that's our last little bit. So we are adjourned.
Yeah.
one minute.
The same.
All right.
Slide.